Sacred Symbols, a PlayStation podcast, is brought to you by, well, you. If you want to learn how to support our show, go to patreon.com/laststandmedia. Greetings and salutations. Welcome back to Sacred Symbols, a PlayStation podcast. This is episode number 185. My name is Colin Moriarty. I'm joined as always by my two sons, Chris Raygun. Chris, how are you today, my friend?
I'm doing all right. Having a good day so far. I feel weirdly rested today, even though I slept, I think, for maybe 3.5, 4 hours max.
Good. You're wired.
Yeah,
good.
Wired.
Yeah. I saw you tweeting earlier today. So I knew you were up and about, which is good. It's nice to see.
Yeah.
Other son, Dustin Furman, executive producer of Last Stand Media. How are you today, my friend?
I am doing I'm not doing good. I am good. But yeah, it's been a pretty productive week here in the Last Stand studio offices or whatever. But I feel like, I am trying to get into some old hobbies recently. Colin, I know you do G.I. Joes, of course, the collecting and the cleaning.
Yes.
I decided to bring back, I'm doing the model kit building once again.
Oh.
And so I had some of these Star Wars kits that I think my mom bought me this X-Wing, like not last Christmas, it was the one before. So I'm back into it. I'm doing some
cool
model kit building, some Gundams.
Wow.
And just refreshing. Sometimes I think that, at least for me, I get so in the weeds with games that I don't do other hobbies. And it's really refreshing to do something else for even just a little bit. So
it's funny you say that because, the G.I. Joe thing to me, although I've not been attending to it too much lately, is what I always say my analog hobby. And I think it's good to just have something that's not electronic. But at the same time, I agree with you. I find myself so in the weeds, and then I find myself concerned that I'm not even playing enough. And so we're doing Game of the Year later this episode. And so, spoiler alert for those that don't use the timestamps on YouTube or whatever, but we're doing Game of the Year later, and I was going through and looking at all the games I played this year, and I was like, holy shit, I played a ton of games this year, like a lot. And I'm like, maybe I need to actually like diversify my portfolio a little bit here and get back into doing some other things, because indeed the three games that were in my top 3 games of the year, I think you can argue I played for 250 hours alone.
Jeez.
Combined,
right?
So
Christ.
it's out of control, and maybe I got to dial it back. So maybe that's a nice inspiration for me. So you have your nice little X-Wing. Looks good.
Yeah, I got an X-Wing, and I've got the Walker, the AT-AT, or the AT-AT, whatever you want to call it.
Depends on your generation, apparently. I call it an AT-AT, which I've had people be like, no one called it AT-AT. No one calls it AT. I'm like, are you fucking kidding? Who are you talking to like that?
Yeah.
First of all, who is
I don't
this
have a strong opinion
man talking to like that?
Yeah.
Number one. And second of all, yes, the AT-AT and the ATST.
Of course. And then I have
Chicken
like
Walker, by the way, that used to be called in the 80s.
Right. That's right. So I'm excited to build those. And it's funny, Colin, you're mentioning about thinking that you didn't play very much. We were in the Last Stand Discord, shout out for our $5 patrons and above if you want to join us there. We were discussing games and such, and I thought the same thing. I thought, I don't feel like I played enough. And then I went to my notes app and started listing everything. And then I thought, oh, I have played a lot, just not necessarily a lot of stuff from this year, even though I did a lot of stuff from this year.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
For example, I was like, oh yeah, casually all 3 Dark Souls games, Demon Souls, all 6 Halo games this year.
Yeah, that's a lot.
So when I realized, like, oh yeah, there has been a lot.
That's like that could be half your year. I mean, easily. That would be a normal person's years. It would take them probably to do all. But
sometimes you got to just dive into old stuff. It kind of I've been doing that almost exclusively. Feels like just visiting games that I just sort of put down either a little bit too early or even just old stuff from 360 PS3 times that I maybe missed out on, because I don't know, man. There's valuable stuff back there just chilling.
Definitely. And I did the same thing specifically at the Metal Gear games when I played Metal Gear Solid 2 and Metal Gear Solid 3. this past fall, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I'm playing Persona 4 Golden chronically. We'll talk about that a little bit, but otherwise, thanks everyone for being here with us. It's good to see all of you, with all of you listening to the world's most popular, most beloved PlayStation podcast, Sacred Symbols, published each and every week, and you can get it 3 days early and ad-free by going to patreon.com/laststandmedia, where some 12,000 of you are right now. We really appreciate your love, kindness, and support of all things over there. As Dustin said, our Discord is popping off. Is that what do the kids still use that?
It's bussin', Colin.
It's bussin'.
Yeah.
And respectfully.
I hate myself for saying that.
That is, I definitely like you less.
Yeah. I do like that meme of Aunt May and Uncle Ben and Peter Parker, and he's like, this meatloaf is bussin', Aunt May, respectfully. And then the next scene is Uncle Ben saying like crying, saying like, what the fuck is he talking about, Aunt May? It's really good. It's a good one. People should go look up that one. But I appreciate the use of that word. Of course, Sacred Symbols Plus is a big perk over there, published twice a week. These are interviews and deep dives into games and topical conversations. Vincent Gennito I had on, who was so-called Me Too'd back in 2017 out of the games industry. That episode is completely blowing up. So thank you for your love, kindness, and support on that. I have an episode coming up with a labor organizer, a pro-union labor organizer. We're going to talk about unionizing in the games industry. I have an episode coming up all about China. I have an episode that we already did that's really popular with a guy named William Holbert, who's been playing games the entire time that the industry has existed. That episode was also really big. We have an episode coming up about fighting games. We have another one coming up about Gran Turismo. We have our fantasy draft coming up as well. And I have a plan, an iron in the fire with the Dukes to see if we can actually combine to do something that is multi-year. I have this plot, as I've emailed everyone, where I want to do something so deep that we might not even really see the end of it. But who knows? It'll be fun. So all that's coming up on Sacred Symbols Plus. And remember, no more merch for now. We are taking care of that. We'll have more to say about that in the coming weeks. Christopher Peterson wrote into us on Patreon. That is another one of your perks. And by the way, typically there'd be many more inquiries in our show. We have cut off the back end this week to do Game of the Year. So we're going to hear from you less this week, but keep submitting. Of course, I read them all. Colin Commando, he says, once upon a time, you began living your dream of only having one trash can in the entire house, despite everyone else thinking this was preposterous. With the addition of Micah, Russian Treble, is that dream still alive? Thanks for being the best PlayStation podcast. PlayStation PR pretends doesn't exist. They pretend we don't exist, but they're listening. We hope they're doing well. Now, here's the thing about the one garbage can philosophy. It was never meant to survive another person living here, because I'm not one to foist my own values onto another. And so, first of all, the house isn't huge. It's like 2,500 square feet. And I have a kitchen garbage can. And that was where everything would go. Now we have a kitchen garbage can, and we have like a bathroom garbage can and maybe some other miscellanea. So I'm sorry that really drove a lot of people crazy, but I have to give it to Mike. I mean, she needs to be comfortable. And if she needs a garbage can, she needs another garbage can. That's just the way it goes. Thank you for checking in on that, Christopher. And finally, before we get into the news, QT wrote in and said, good day, chaps. I just wanted to check in with Dustin to make sure he is okay after Colin's revelation on Sacred Symbols Plus that he is going to play Persona 5 before Persona 5 Royale. Royal, I'm sorry, he says Royale here. Royal, so he doesn't have to go backwards in case he decides to get both trophy lists. I could literally hear Dustin's synapses exploding through my speakers as Colin was explaining this nonsensical idea. In any case, you do you, Colin. Peace, love, and prosperity to you all. Thank you, QT, for writing in. Of course, that is referencing the last episode of Sacred Symbols Plus, in which Dustin and I sat down and ranked, preposterously and fastidiously ranked, the PlayStation Plus collection 20-1. And it was a fun conversation. And so obviously we were talking about all those games. Dustin, how are you feeling after that? Have you been thinking about it? So
here's the thing is that I saw some feedback, again, not to plug our Discord, but about this conversation.
Plug it. It's awesome. I love it.
It's
exciting to have so many fans there and stuff.
Yeah. So we were having a conversation, and some people were saying, Dustin, you need to buy Colin Persona 5 Royal. And I instantly thought, guys, you're our paid patrons. You listen. Don't you know, Colin, like the $30 or $40 barrier, that's not what it is. You guys don't understand this man like I do, which maybe that's why I've risen the ranks of producers, because I somehow understand Colin's mind, maybe more than he does, maybe not. I don't know. I don't want to.
You're like you're like the one person who can speak and understand me, the whisperer.
Right. And there were people that were telling me how I could try to convince you further and all these different angles. I was like, guys, no, this is not how Colin operates. I made my case during that podcast. And even then, I technically didn't tell you to play Royal just on your own. I said, if you're going to play one, choose that one over the other.
Right.
And now I'm going to leave it. You just leave it. You can think about it and make your own choice. But any further comments from me would be a negative, purely because then it becomes potentially a matter of spite. Maybe not. I don't know. But I made my case, and it's fine. If Colin wants to start Persona 5 and then never platinum it and then never play Royal, which would be the outcome if that happens, so be it. He's his own man. I'm my own man. And that's it.
That's fine. I appreciate.
There's a lot of chaotic energy just flowing out of you right now.
It's good stuff. Thank you. Thank you so much for writing in with that note and reminding Dustin of his own psychoses as well. All right, let's get into some various one-off pieces of news. I want to start here with a, I guess, PSA of some sort.
Yeah.
Horizon 2, which comes out, what is it, February 18th? I have it written here on my wall. Yeah, February 18th is apparently out in the wild. And so expect that someone is going to try to ruin it for you. Now, I don't know that this has the same firepower in any way, shape, or form as The Last of Us Part 2, especially because this game is so, I would say, far less contingent on story and spoiler. But
yeah.
But nonetheless, you're going to want to stay clear of that. And I'm certainly staying clear of that. So don't expect any more Horizon 2 coverage here. But I am acknowledging that happened. Apparently, it's from some dude circulating screenshots of the PS4 iteration. I don't know. I guess it indicates the game has gone gold. I don't think they've revealed that yet, but I would assume that's what that means. Also a reminder, I don't know if either of you are going to play it, but God of War is coming to PC. The day this podcast drops on Patreon, it'll be out. It's got a 93 on Metacritic. Not a huge surprise. Kind of funny to see a lot of people talking about it that maybe weren't paying attention. Of course, the shoe's always on the other foot because the people are always talking about shit I'm not familiar with, but it's cool to be on the team. It's like, yeah, God of War is great. Of course, we know God of War is great. So, Chris, are you gonna? I know you have a passion for God of War 2018. Are you gonna revisit it? You think?
I don't know. I feel two ways about it. I feel like it's still a game that's fresh enough in my mind and story driven enough in my mind that I feel like once I start it, I'll remember everything that happens and I'll feel less compelled to finish it because there are so many other games that, even just new games that I haven't played or old games that I haven't played that I really want to get into. So that's kind of in my head of like, it's not old enough for me to replay yet. But at the same time, I'm thinking, man, 60 frames, PC customization. I wonder, me personally, I'm really curious about how flexible this will be as a PC product, just from options and out of sheer curiosity, how people, if they will be able to mod it, because that'll be really cool and really fun. So I don't know. I might pick it up, but I don't know if I'll play it. I might push it off for later just to see what people are going to do in the PC space with it. But it's a fantastic game, and if you haven't played it and this is your only way to do it, absolutely play it. You're going to be playing a way better version than we played when we were playing it at, 30 frames or whatever on PS4.
What do you think, Dustin? Are you going to go give it a go on PC as you sometimes do?
I'm not going to quite yet. It's a bit steep for me as someone who's already played it. But like Chris said, if you haven't played this, then definitely go out, get this as soon as possible. I'm really intrigued by some of the PC features as well. And I saw something, I can't credit who said it because I can't remember, but I saw on Twitter about how a lot of additional work was done on this PC port because of the ultra wide support. Specifically, when you do ultra wide and you do it correctly, you're basically making the frame much wider. And so there may be things that originally were out of frame that now are in frame and need cleaned up, whether that's animation or just random stuff. And that's cool to see Sony really going all out. This has been kind of a slow buildup of the quality of their PC releases. This one, from what I'm seeing, is top tier. It has DLSS support, which people with newer NVIDIA graphics cards know that feature is a game changer as far as your frame rates and getting higher resolutions. So Sony really finally doing it 100% right from what it seems. We'll see when it launches tomorrow. Of course, there could be something horrendous at Arkham Knight. I don't think at this point we'd have an Arkham Knight situation, but
no.
Reviews are positive. I think you can confidently pick this one up.
All right, a couple other things here, a couple scoops just to kind of throw out there. I've been talking to someone in the know at Sony. Apparently marketing spending is increasing greatly this year, indicating that Sony is anticipating a large year. Beyond, I would assume, the games we know imminently most about, Horizon, Gran Turismo, etc. So just a piece of information to kind of think about. And what I think makes that most interesting is apparently one of the things that is raising the spend is a major yet unrevealed third-party exclusive. I don't know the nature of it. I'm wondering, boys, what you think that might be. I have no inclination of it. But what came to mind for me were the rumors that the new BioShock game is actually a timed exclusive. And I'm wondering if that is the one. Does anything come to mind for you, Dustin?
Now that you say that, I feel like that's the most obvious answer. Sony, before this generation began, was going around with their checkbook, finding the biggest IP that they could secure. We've talked about Starfield was a very heavily rumored game, and they got Final Fantasy, which, again, absolutely massive game to secure. So I was trying to think, what other stuff could it be? Maybe an unannounced From Software game. I feel like that could kind of be in the same ballpark of a new BioShock, but I don't know. You got to be careful where I would say that it's in their best interest to not try to pull a Microsoft and take a sequel game and make it exclusive. For example, I thought of the new Jedi Fallen Order game. What if that would become exclusive for PlayStation, just because that's another anticipated thing? But I think that's a terrible move. But I think BioShock, maybe From Software. I don't know. Chris, is there any that's come to your mind? Because I feel like I'm drawing a blank outside of that.
I think we're drawing a blank for a reason, and it's because this is something that is not known about yet. I think this is something that has yet to be announced. I don't think BioShock, to me, doesn't seem like something Sony would go after, purely because there's kind of an Xbox history with BioShock, and it's also one of those situations where arbitrarily this BioShock game is like the one BioShock game that's going to be not on Xbox platform. That just seems like a weird pull for me, especially because, as far as we know, the new BioShock, I don't know. Usually when there's an incredible game, or when there's like an incredible product, like behind the scenes, like, man, people are really excited about it, you'd hear about something by now, like some eager soul just talking about it online, or like some weird leak. But BioShock's been pretty tight. And I'm still of the mind that BioShock doesn't really have even a real shot at being anywhere near living up to the legacy of the original series. And I don't know if Sony would want to bet on that necessarily, in the sense of like full-on third-party exclusive marketing. I think this is something we don't know about yet, and I think it'll be like probably like a surprise drop or a surprise announcement come maybe E3 season, since E3 is not technically happening in the same way. But I don't think it's anything that we know about.
I don't know. We'll find out. I will say about BioShock, the only rumors that have come from it, of course, are from me.
That's true.
You're welcome, world. Hope you like cold settings. All right. The other scoop, of course, I talked about this a couple weeks ago, that Take-Two, 2K, well, Take-Two's 2K label is publishing a game from Supermassive. I've been told from a source that this is actually the game Supermassive was rumored to be making for Stadia. And in fact, it's just changing hands and might be closer to being finished than we thought. So something to keep an eye on. I don't know what the nature of the game is, though, although I think we all assume we're going to just get a Supermassive game. Yeah. So there is that to ponder as well. But I wanted to talk about this news. I was originally going to write this up. This is actually really big news, but it's hard to just write up in our usual news. So I just wanted to talk about it a little more casually. VentureBeat is reporting, the website VentureBeat, of course, others are since reporting. They say, quote, gamers in the United Kingdom will no longer have the option to buy a subscription to PlayStation Now at UK retailers. By Friday, January 21st, retailers in the country will have to pull PS Now cards from their shelves. This is according to messaging that is going out to stores like Game this week. And the message just says, quote, stores have until the end of day Wednesday, 19 January. I don't know why I said March. To remove all POS and ESD cards from all customer-facing areas and update their digital bays in line with this week's upcoming commercial update, end quote. And so people are looking at this as a signal that the Spartacus rumors are not only true, which of course I assume that they're true, but that maybe something more imminent is happening. They want to stop PlayStation Now availability. And of course, a good way for people to get PlayStation currency in any way is to just buy cards. People just often do that. So it is a little confusing for that because PS Now is inherently streaming. Like I don't know why you would necessarily need a card for that, but this is a signal nonetheless. Now people are pulling out this Mark Cerny patent that has been making the rounds as well, called backwards compatibility through use of spoof clock and fine grain frequency control, which is basically this patent stating that they've figured out some sort of solution to backwards compatibility. However, it is a republished. They're re-upping this patent. It's not new. Apparently, it's 7 years old. So don't get too excited. But I don't know that I don't know that the timing is necessarily inconsequential. I think that the timing is quite consequential. It's just something that has been reported on in the past. So, Chris, let's go to you first. What do you think about this? I mean, certainly this is a signal that we're about to get this new version of what I would imagine is going to be PlayStation Plus. And I'm curious what you think is going on.
Yeah, I do think it's probably more imminent than we think it is, but at the same time, it's 2022. It's where we know how fast a year can fly by, and it's already starting, and it makes sense that they would be trying to kind of get the old version of PS Now, especially availability to it in the form of the retail cards, kind of out of the way before they start transitioning over to this kind of hybrid system. How imminent it will be, I don't know. I feel like this is still a little far out. I think this is more of, hey, we have to make sure all of these loose ends are tied up early so that when we do roll this thing out, it's as smooth as possible. I still think that's where we're at right now. I don't think it's going to be launching next week or anything, but it's definitely coming soon. I would imagine definitely within the next 3 months for sure. We're going to see this thing. My guess is March, personally. I don't even know why. I just feel like that. It just makes sense to me. I think
you might be right about March. I think I'll explain more when we get to the news items that I think might suggest this as well. But I'm feeling like it might be soon as well. This is a move you make that is going to get signaled, and so I think you understand people are going to start reading into it. And Dustin, do you think that Chris's inclination that this is soon is right?
Yeah, definitely. There may be a possibility that I'm trying to think. With Xbox, there was a thing that people could use different cards and then it would convert into Game Pass. And so I'm wondering if this is a way that they're trying to get those cards off the market in order to, when they do this new thing, that there's less having to convert a lower tier card into their new service. So that's a possibility. This patent thing is interesting to me, just in that I'm looking at the tweet thread that you posted here where someone posted the upping of the patent, and it reminded me of the slide from the Mark Cerny Power Hour, where it shows backwards compatibility at the top, and then it lists PS5, PS4 Pro, PS4. But then there's a very suspicious gap under that. And when the Power Hour happened, this was a point of discussion. Why was this gap here of where it clearly looks like there should be other PlayStation consoles listed? And I think we all just kind of forgot about that, rightfully so, because nothing happened. But I would hate. I can't believe that was an accident or something they didn't think about. From a graphic design standpoint, whoever made that, it just invites the question. So I do feel confident that some form of backwards compatibility is coming, and this little reminder kind of confirmed that to me.
Mm-hmm.
Fair enough. We'll see. Hopefully more soon on this. Sony doesn't, of course, comment on rumors and speculation, so we're not going to know for a while. We have this story from gamesindustry.biz. Mergers and acquisitions activity reached $85 billion in value in 2021. This is 3 times the amount from 2020. Apparently, it's 1,100 total deals. So there were, in terms of mergers, acquisitions, those kinds of activities in the games industry from large to small, of course, including mobile and other spaces, casual. Yeah, 1,100 total deals amounting to $85 billion in crossed revenue. Now, what's staggering about an announcement we're going to talk about later having to do with Take-Two and Zynga is that this number is already 1/6 complete in the first 2 weeks of the year. So that's just a signal of how crazy and heinous this is about to get and how unfortunate I think that truly is. Guys, I wanted to ask you about this thing about Dying Light 2. Now, I'm really excited about Dying Light 2. Dying Light 2 comes out February 4th on PS4 and PS5, and I'm amped about it. I love it.
Yeah.
I love the original Dying Light. They tweeted this out, and it just really had much consternation and created much consternation, and I understand why. And it said, to fully complete Dying Light 2 Stay Human, you'll need at least 500 hours, almost as long as it would take to walk from Warsaw, where the studio is, I think, to Madrid in Spain. And people are like, are you fucking kidding me? They're using this as a selling point. Like, this is something that we should be really excited about. Can't you believe you're going to dedicate your life to Dying Light 2? And then they had to come out and kind of clarify this is a 100% completion rate. And then they had to clarify even further, saying, all right, wait, the main game is like 20 hours. Side quests, maybe another 40 or 50. And they're talking about what I had said at the very beginning, which was obvious, which was they're probably keeping this granular Ubisoft type percentage that probably goes to like 2 or 3 digits after the decimal, where it counts every collectible and every interaction and every choice and every custom weapon and all this bullshit that I'm probably... And I think as a Dying Light fan, I feel like they were talking to their fans because people have been playing Dying Light for 7 years. Like, there are people that are just playing Dying Light still. And to me, I was like, okay, but you already got them. You don't need to sell them on Dying Light. You need to sell people on Dying Light that don't care about Dying Light. And I think this is the inflection point finally, Chris, where we see that developers will finally realize we don't want bloated ass games, and you using that as a barometer of quality or of relevance even is a bad thing. I would much rather them said, like, we have 100, just the tightest 100 hours you will ever see in a game. And that's it. You're not going to need any more than that. So what do you think about this?
Yeah, no, I agree with most of the criticism that I've seen. It is a dumb way to market games. I feel like generally the attitude or the conversation around length in games, especially as far as, media goes, or as far as, podcasts, or just like the circles that we are in, like, hours are not a selling point to us, because we've talked about on the show countless times how, we'd rather have a really short, incredible, endlessly replayable experience than something that drags on for an infinite amount of time that is not nearly well designed enough to justify that amount of time to be put into it. And it's just a strange thing for a developer to point out, because I feel like they should know that, like, they should know that that's not a selling point. They should know that if they tweet something like that or put that on their social media, that people at large are going to be like, what the fuck? It seems to me like maybe their community management team is not particularly all that great. Doesn't really say anything about the game, really. Like, I still think the game's going to be great. And I do think this is obviously like a massive overestimation of how long it'll actually take to complete. There's no way this game's going to take 500 hours to complete. At least to a satisfactory degree. You're probably fine after like 50 hours, I would imagine. If that.
I was just gonna say, I'm sorry. I was just gonna say, like, I don't even think, Chris, that people think of how absurd that amount of time is. How much time that is. 500 hours is a lot of time. Why would you even want to play Dying Light 2 for 500 hours? No offense. There is no game I've ever encountered outside of the game of chess that I would want to play for 500 hours.
I think
none. Zero.
I think maybe cumulatively over the last 20 years, I think maybe I've put 500 hours into Halo as a series, as like several games. You know what I mean? Like I just like 500 hours of and there are games that I've played for hundreds of hours. Sure, like I think I played. Certainly, I think Destiny or Destiny 2 I've played for easily like maybe like 200 something hours. I get it. There are those games that people have, and if you want Dying Light to be that game, sure. But like advertising this as something that's going to get most people excited, I can't. Like you said, they already have their fans excited. It's a sequel to Dying Light that they've taken an insane amount of time to make. So it's safe to assume from their fan standpoint that it's going to be a big game. It's going to take a long time to finish. We're going to have a lot to sink our teeth into. We don't need to be sold this. Just seems like a weird marketing misstep, in my opinion. I don't think it says anything about the quality of the game or the team or anything. But
I totally agree with you. And I'll say, too, that Dying Light conspicuously doesn't have a publisher. So this might be a mistake that a publisher wouldn't have made, although publishers make plenty of mistakes themselves. But I think about Assassin's Creed Valhalla as being the last game that people were just like, this is insanity. And that game was, it was 100 hours, basically 150 maybe, if you did everything. And here's my suggestion, Dustin, is that, because I hear, Chris, I've played games for more than 100 hours, certainly.
Yeah.
But I would argue that it's more like the Richter scale. And what I mean by that is, it's not that the Richter scale represents 0 to 100. It represents an exponential increase every time you get to a new number, right? So it's something like a 9. If you get like a 7 on the Richter scale, and then a 7.1 is, I think, twice as much, and a 7.2 is twice as much, and a 7.3 is twice as much, and you know what I mean? So as you're getting into 100 hours, 200 hours, these hours become more and more crushing. I feel like you have to earn them more and more, as opposed to how easy a 30-minute or 5-hour or 10-hour game it is, and how breezy that is. I feel like when you get into the 100 or 200 hours, you become that Wojak face that's just all blacked out, right? And so 500 hours, you're going to be bleeding out of your eyeballs. And that's kind of the point I'm making, is 500 hours gaming is well spent, but amongst many a game. And I can only imagine that I've gotten anywhere close to that in maybe like Civilization or something. Yeah, I think I've played role-playing games for between 50 and 150 hours many times. But anything more than 100 or 150 hours, that's almost impossible for me to imagine. I don't think there's anything except for maybe, again, Civilization. And to Chris's point, again, multiple Civilization games, not just one. So what do you think, Dustin?
Just to briefly analyze the level of blunder this was, all you have to do is go to their Twitter page, and it's actually really funny if you look it out, how it happened piece by piece. First of all, the initial image says 500 hours to complete the game. And it's only on the tweet itself it says to fully complete. And they quickly scrambled with a follow-up tweet that says, note, it's 100%. That's to get 100%. The next day, 24 hours later, they do a quote tweet. Update, 500 hours is relating to maxing out the game, finishing all the quests. They clarify.
If you're explaining, you're losing, man.
That wasn't good enough, I think, because they put out, let's see, they did another tweet 2 days after that was a clarification, but with the same image of saying 500 hours. Oh, wait, no, it's different. It's revised. But here's the key point, that this is something you brought up, Colin. Under 500 hours, it says time needed to max out the game with all main and side quests, choices, and endings, checking every place on the map, every dialogue, and finding every collectible.
Every dialogue.
Every piece of dialogue contributes to this 500 hours.
Oh, calm down.
The actual time to fully complete main story and all side quests is 80 hours, according to this updated
which is
image.
Awesome. That's great. 80 hours is good. I think that's probably going to be a little long in the tooth, but those games are or that game, the first one I should say, is so fun that sounds about that. Right. Also, I seem to be settling at 80 hours with my games of the year, which we'll talk about later. But anyway, what do you have to say, Chris?
No, I was gonna say, it's like, if you're include every line of, if you wanted to see every single blade of grass and if you want, I would have, it takes me probably 2,000 hours to do that in most games. You know what I mean? Like, I could imagine if that's the criteria by which they're explaining that that's how they're measuring length. Most games would probably be 500 to 2 million hours.
Yeah,
you know,
I'm really interested to see. And I know we have fans of the studio, and Head, I know you're listening specifically at who's one of the heads of the studio. He's awesome. I agree with what you were saying. I think we should underline that it doesn't speak to the game's quality, and I'm sure the studio itself.
Was
it's
just funny.
But here's my favorite thing. I don't know if you saw Flying Wild Hog tweeted, who are doing Shadow Warrior 3. Their tweet was fucking hysterical. It actually made me LOL, made me laugh out loud, which was they said you can. They just I think quote tweeted it or something and said you can beat. It'll take you 500 hours to beat Shadow Warrior 360 times.
Yeah.
I was like, that's fucking awesome. I love that.
That is good.
Do you think this is good or bad PR overall? Because they've clarified, and I think everyone understands, but this was kind of a big story, at least for people on Twitter, for a few days. It brought a lot of attention.
Yeah, it did. I think it might have even benefited them ultimately.
Yeah.
I don't think this is even remote. I feel like it's such a. This isn't like, hey, Dying Light 2 will take 500 hours to complete, and also there's 500 NFTs in it. You know, it's not it's not one of those stories. Which, if they had a publisher, probably would be the case. So I don't think it's a big deal. I feel like people have already kind of forgotten about this, or if they did hear about it, I don't think it's going to affect anybody's decision. What are you going to be like? Oh, there's so much content in this game, I guess I won't play it. You know, if you're interested in Dying Light 2, you're going to buy it and you're going to play it for as long as you feel satisfied or you feel driven to play it. And the amount of time it takes to see every single pixel in the game is going to deter you.
All right. Well, we're looking forward to it anyway. It doesn't sound like we are, but we are. Comes out. I keep looking at my list. February 4th. I want to keep sure I'm get my day, because I've outlined the next couple of months for myself. See if I can keep it on. Keep on. What are you doing, Dustin? Are you pouring?
I knew there was going to be a big episode. I said, fuck it. I'm bringing the whole thing up here.
What are you fucking concocting?
Another round of coffee. Let's go.
Wow, you're like a barista over here, just going off.
Wait, I could try to pour it in the microphone. Not in the microphone, but wait.
No, pour it in the microphone. Go ahead. See how that goes.
Did that come through?
I don't know. I didn't hear it.
It did. I heard it.
I'm sure Ben will raise.
Someone just pissed their pants from hearing that.
Ben, can you bass boost that?
All right. Oh, I wanted to bring up this interesting letter. We don't really talk about Riot Games on this show. There's really no reason to talk about Riot because we don't. They actually released their role-playing game that was on PlayStation a few months ago, but there's an interesting letter over there. I want people to go check it out if they're just interested in the industry itself. It says calling the shot the next 5 years at Riot Games, and it's this extensive look at Riot and their need to do what I think is necessary, which is to evolve. Their studio is revolving around one game that is very old, and they're finally, I think, finding more success in other things, as we know. So the one thing I wanted to point out here is that I didn't know this, that if you work at Riot, you can opt out of your job within the first 6 months in this thing, the system they have called Q Dodge, and they'll actually pay you a part of your salary as you transition out of the company if you find it's not right for you. But their new direction is so staggering, I guess, internally, that they're giving everyone that works there an opportunity to leave, and they will be paid a flat sum of 1/4 of their annual salary if they leave.
Wow.
So something's going on at Riot, and I'll be interested to keep an eye on how that all works out. But it seems like if you read the letter, a lot of it has to do with cross-media stuff and obviously maintaining the success of League and doing all the other stuff they do. So go check it out if you want. I had to ask you guys about this.
Mm-hmm.
What is going on with G4? G4 has been revived. I don't know why. For people that are unaware, G4 was a one-time popular television channel that was, I think, originally Tech TV. And it had an array of games and technology shows, and it went away about 10 years ago. But some people like Olivia Munn, who's famous now, got their start there. And I'm just wondering, Dustin, I want to start with you. Have you paid attention to this content at all, or tuned into it? Because it all kind of came to a head recently, where this woman, her name is Indiana, I think, but her username is Froskerin, had this rant that went viral about the way women are treated in the industry and all of this. And while I agreed with what she was saying in the main, I find the sexualization of overt sexualization and demeaning of women and just anyone in our space or in any space to be just unnecessary and ridiculous and old, right? Like an old Mad Men-esque feel, although it was never quite like that. But you understand what I'm saying. Nonetheless, I feel like there's this adversarial nature that has just been growing between people that cover things, and I mean things. So I'm not just saying games, like politics, cars, probably, like whatever. And the people that read this stuff or listen. And I was reading the responses to it, and a lot of it is just a lot of like, we're just like, what is this? What is going on with G4? So I'm just curious if you've paid attention to this at all. It seems like it's failing. I don't know if you have any insight.
I don't have a lot of insight. I haven't seen very much of what they're doing. The situation that with this clip that's gone viral is an interesting one in that I agree with a lot of things that she said. I can totally see YouTube comments treating women poorly, disproportionately, for sure. I always just wonder, though, I learned something very important over the past year for me. This is my first year on a big podcast, was 2021, right?
Right.
And there was a time when certain YouTube comments would really bother me and I would respond to them. And then at some point I was looking at someone else's YouTube channel and I saw a creator doing that. And I felt kind of bad for them because I thought, why engage with that low level, that lowly comment that just said that to piss you off? And it clicked something in my brain. And so, sure, we'll engage with negative feedback here and there, but I just don't know if her approach in this is going to help her in the long run, because the internet is a terrible place where saying something like that just is really inviting more trolls. But I don't know. At the same time, I'm really mixed on this because I feel like what she said was important. So I don't know.
It's
Chris, what do you think? Since you have a lot of, experience dealing with YouTube comments and trolls or whatever. I mean, this is different since you're a dude and she's talking about the sexism aspect, but they're somewhat similar.
Yeah, well, I mean, I had a very public relationship with another content creator years ago, and I remember seeing just the way that comments would,
oh my God, dude,
would talk about that, and it's different, man. It is, and so like I was watching this rant, and I was like, yeah, I agree with this, but at the same time, I know why you're feeling mixed on it, because I felt the same way, because she's looking directly at the camera, right, and she's kind of. There's very clearly an adversarial nature to it, where it's like, I'm speaking to you, I'm letting you know how I feel, and you're just watching it and you're like,
I haven't said shit.
Yeah, like it feels like, it almost feels like you walked into a room and it almost feels like you're stepping into the shoes of somebody who did something wrong, and you're like, whoa. It kind of feels like that. It's like, whoa, I'm just chilling. I don't know who but at the same time, there are people who are watching who that applies to. So I feel like it's just this inherent disconnect where it really depends on who's watching, how effective that rant is. But at the same time, there's also this ancient rule on the internet where you don't let people know what bothers you. You just don't do that, because then people just bring that shit up for the sole purpose of because they know that it works. You don't go like, hey, this is something that bothers me, and then expect to not get an influx of people doing the thing that bothers you just because you told them. And so this rant, I feel like, is going to have a negative impact in the sense that they could have simply dealt with the people in chat on the moderator side. Like, hey, these people are being assholes in the chat, just ban them. Like, I don't begrudge anybody for doing that. If you want to keep a tight community of people who don't suck, I think that's fine. That's
Certainly.
totally in your right to do it. And I think that's a way better way of fostering, an intelligent and, thoughtful and welcoming community, is to just get rid of people who you think are bad actors. I don't think that's wrong. But what this does is it kind of paints a target on G4, and then people will be like, oh, what are these people? And then the hate follows start to come in, and then it becomes like a mission almost on other people's behalf to just sort of fuck with the staff. And I'll say full disclosure, I know Gerard, who is a creator on G4. I've spoken with him a couple times. He's a really cool guy. So maybe it could be possible that I'm a little biased in the sense that I want to see where G4 is coming from a little bit more than I would if I didn't know anybody involved. But at the same time, I do think there's validity in the rant. I just feel like the execution was a little unnecessary, and they could have thought of a far more effective way of dealing with negative people in their audience. It's just it's a very weird video to watch.
Yeah.
When it doesn't apply to you,
I also just think the thing that I drew out of it as I was thinking about it too was just, what fictional version of G4 are you illustrating to the current audience that never existed?
Yeah. Like
that was
like
the one
G4,
thing she was like,
G4,
I watched G4 and I watched it because I respected Olivia Munn, and I'm like, that's totally cool. A lot of people did, but no channel or website or magazine or anything in games media had ever objectified women anywhere close to the extent that G4 did. And it was one of the reasons why I wasn't really into it, to be honest. I never liked G4. I'm not trying to be like a hipster with it. It's just I never liked G4. I just felt like it was cringy, and it felt fake and very one level. Yeah. And to act like Morgan Webb and Olivia Munn weren't these objectified women in these positions, it's just not true. And
yeah,
I'm not justifying what's happening to her is saying that. I'm just saying, like, why are you revising history to make it seem like the new audience is this vile thing when in fact G4 had courted this the entire time? Maybe it's kind of like reaping, not the person, but the brand reaping what it sowed. And I don't understand
exactly
why anyone would want. I can't believe people sat in like a boardroom or on Zoom probably and were like, let's revive G4.
Yeah, if you wanted to avoid this, you could have just did something new and not done G4. You know what I mean? Like
very weird.
G4, Olivia Munn had a fucking panty pile,
right,
on Attack of the Show.
I didn't know that.
It was like a bit. It was like it was a joke. And honestly, I know where people are coming from. It was like, it was a little bit of objectifying, but at the same time, there was an aspect of it that was just like, whatever. Like nobody really cared. People were just fucking doing whatever. And that was what was fun about G4 to me, was that it's this is just a bunch of people hanging out and making crude fucking jokes all the time. It felt like chilling with friends, but seeing it on it was a very strange experience as like a kid growing up with it. I really appreciated it. And but this revisionist history of like, G4 was never, there was no sexualization of anything on G4. It's like, you're out of your fucking mind.
Yeah,
it's not Spike TV or anything, I guess. Right. Spike TV was probably worse, but because they had, I think the Spike TV had like the Man Show and shit.
Right.
But even so, this is not anything new. I'm sure like Olivia Munn and Kristen Holt and Morgan Webb, these people were very, very knowledgeable, and they knew what they were talking about. But I mean, it's very clear also that they were attractive people. You know, two things can be true at once. You can be qualified for the job and attractive and hired for both of those reasons. You know, if somebody was just as qualified as any of those people, but less attractive, I don't think in old G4 that they would have gotten the job. No way. That is my assumption based on how television has worked and probably still works to this fucking day. But I don't know. Is that a controversial opinion? Is that like a controversial thing to say? I feel like that's pretty straightforward.
No, I think it is. And like, I think that's what conflates the situation where G4 reaped this.
Right.
You know, and that is what is so ironic about it, is that like G4 is responsible for so much of the cringe that we ended up getting and a lot of the inappropriate shit and the tenor that it set. And I will say this also, and we can move on, is that I don't know many of the people that work at G4, but they have some pretty vile people working for them. Like, I think Adam Sessler is one of the most toxic, just vile people in the industry. I don't know what happened to that dude. I know a lot of people wonder that because a lot of people say that. And when you set a tenor with an audience and say like, fuck Republicans, fuck this, fuck that, why aren't you guys being nice to us? It's like at Last Stand, we have a sardonic way about us, but we want to welcome everyone. Everyone's welcome. And you're going to continue to see an array of conversations specifically on Sacred Symbols Plus that are going to prove it. Right. So I just look at the situation as it is, and I'm like, maybe start with yourself.
Yeah.
You know, and decouple it from the inappropriateness of the sexual harassment and all of that, which is inappropriate and vile no matter where it comes from. And understand also that some people are criticizing you because it's just not very good. And they also want to know like what's going on with this skeletal shambling corpse of a brand that is trying to whitewash what it used to be. No way, not on my watch, buddies. So,
yeah.
But I mean, it's like, yeah, you have Adam Sessler, someone who is miserable involved in your brand. I feel like that's gonna. You don't see Morgan Webb and Olivia Munn doing shit with this.
Yeah.
You know? And for someone that roots so hard against other people and tries to take so many other people down, Adam Sessler, like I noticed the state of your career with my own two eyes, friend. So maybe start with yourselves as well and reflect on that. I'll leave it there.
Yeah.
Some of the fucking meanest people in the industry. Some of the fucking rudest, meanest, most alienating people. Give me a break. All right. A couple things I wanted to touch on for just random personnel announcements before we get into what we're playing. PlatinumGames. Kenichi Sato is leaving after 6 years or so as the CEO and president of the team, and Atsushi Inaba, who is already the creative lead of PlatinumGames, is taking over there. Rainbow Six is getting a new director. I think it's their third or fourth. This isn't really a huge deal because the game is just ongoing. So their director is leaving, and you'll remember that the first director of Rainbow Six Siege is now at Guerrilla Games working on an unknown project. And finally, this one is the one I really wanted to get your guys' take on. Mohammed Alavi, who has been with Infinity Ward and then Respawn, both since the teams had started, and is the creative lead and creative director on a single-player game that Respawn is making behind the scenes, is leaving. And he says in part, his quote is, "Today's bittersweet. I'm excited about my next adventure, but I'm sad about leaving behind a family. It's the end of an era," end quote. So he's leaving on his own. I feel like this paints a bad picture of this game because I don't understand why a creative director with control and founding gravitas at this massive EA-owned team, and he worked on Apex Legends, and he worked on Call of Duty, and he worked on Titanfall, and he has control of this game, and then he's like, I'm going to go do something else. So
yeah,
I find that peculiar, and I wonder what that means. Dustin, you have something that you
I was going to say, the biggest question is, does he have control? Is there intervention from a publisher level that maybe was something that was worth leaving over? That's just purely hypothetical, but I don't trust EA at all. So yeah, that's the first thing that I'm going to draw from this. But who knows? Maybe he wants to do something else. It is a good question. He's a creative director. He had all the control. So that should have been his thing. So
it's never a good sign.
Indeed a mystery.
Yeah, I mean, they were promoting it publicly, Chris, as his game. So it wasn't like they were doing it secretly, and they're like, no, this is the man in charge of this game. And Video Games Chronicle, always notable for their great coverage, notes that he is the designer of Call of Duty missions No Russian, which is famous, and All Gillied Up, which is also famous. So a person of
those are great.
Yeah, so a person of substance, no doubt. What do you make of this? I know you're a fan of Respawn, and so I assume this kind of hits pretty close to home.
I mean, I kind of wasn't paying a lot of attention to this single player thing, so I almost feel like we did talk about this, I'm sure, in a previous episode, but it didn't stick with me. So this is kind of like almost like finding out something exists and then finding out that it doesn't exist almost immediately. So I'm not affected really that much by it. I am curious though as to just what the hell happened, because it's never a good sign for a creative director to leave, especially when they when they have control. But I have suspicions that it's EA, and as much as Activision and Ubisoft have done to kind of claw the top spot of least amicably received publisher away from EA, I feel like EA still has that kind of tinge about them where we still don't really trust them. They'll put out a good game every now and again, and they're not publicly fucking up in the way that Activision and Ubisoft have been, but it's still EA. And to me, I always look at EA and I see flashbacks of Pandemic and I just get sad. So we'll see. I'm sure news will come out about this eventually, and maybe in a year's time we'll get some concrete answer in some tell-all interview or something. But I don't know. I don't really care that much, honestly, because we don't know anything about it. We just know that it was a game and now it's not.
Yeah, I'm intrigued. I'm intrigued to simply know what drew him away, if anything. Could be an internal thing, like you guys said. It could be that maybe there's a dream project where he just thought, I can't not do this other thing instead. But we'll continue to look at that. I didn't include it in any of our news, but people can go look. BioWare, another EA-owned team, did release a letter to its fan base, basically saying, we're working earnestly on these new games, blah, 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 blah. And they said something along the lines of, we know we have to repair our reputation. I'm like, man, you got a long way to go on that. I appreciate the acknowledgement. It felt like a Domino's pizza commercial, like where, like, yeah, we know we know we sucked and we got to make it better. Like I thought that was one of the most effective and amazing marketing campaigns, and it totally worked. And they talk about that all the time, like that it did work. Their whole marketing campaign for a few years, as people might recall, was like, we are awful. We are fucking awful. And the arc was, the whole plan was to just start to be like, no, we're not so awful anymore. And now look how good everything is, and blah, 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 blah. And now we do this. Now it's
they're the top dog now too in the pizza game.
Do you remember that? Do you remember that, Chris?
I vaguely remember this. The issue is I lived in New York for the overwhelming majority of my life, so I wasn't really getting Pizza Hut or Domino's. I was getting pizza.
Well, to be fair, I think
pizzerias.
Well, I mean, I was the same, but I think to be fair, you had just avoided football, which is where those commercials are played.
That's also true. Yeah. Yes. So I double whammy as far as that goes. So I had no idea. There was a Domino's thin crust that we used to get, and we were just like, this is fine, whatever. But I totally forgot that was a marketing campaign. I'm getting like vague memories off of the peripheral vision of my eye when my dad would be watching football or whatever, and I'd be playing on a PS1 on a small CRT or whatever. But yeah, I guess they do have to acknowledge it, but at the same time, this is not pizza, man. Like you can't just be like, we got to get better bread.
Right.
You gotta fix your shit massively, like from the ground up. This isn't we got to get tomatoes from a different place. We can start making quite the allegory here if we really wanted to. Oh yeah, for sure.
All right, couple more things.
Times.
I don't know if anyone's been paying attention to this, but I thought it was fascinating. The Battlefield 2042 Reddit is apparently like a disaster. And Dustin, I wanted to ask you about this. I don't know if you've gone over there, but I did read about this stuff. They actually threatened to shut it down. EA did, because it is so out of control. But apparently people are really fighting back. And they're saying, like, we want a game that we paid for. Like, what the fuck do you think we're gonna do? We're upset. I feel like this is kind of a parallel thing to G4, where publishers are reaping what they sow. I don't feel like we want to promote toxicity in any way. We don't have a toxic community at all, which is awesome. But I think part of that comes from just welcoming everyone and kind of just being very laissez-faire about things. And I feel like eventually these publishers need to realize that they're just releasing trash into the wild, and they expect people to just eat it. And I'm wondering if you have any expansion on that.
My main thought is that if you want to express your frustration, then the Battlefield subreddit is the perfect place to do it, because the bad place to do it is to find and target developers of the game and tweet at them. And this is the thing. When you shut down the subreddit, that anger and frustration from the players that may be over the top, for sure. Again, we don't want to encourage...
it is over the top.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. It's definitely over the top and potentially toxic. But when you cut off the mouthpiece, the way that they communicate, they will go more extreme. It just doesn't make any sense. Like, did someone not think about what the next steps are for this? It's just a completely short-sighted move, in my opinion. And this is a delicate one to balance. As you said, Colin, people, I don't know what the full extent of how bad Battlefield 2042 is. I know that it is feature light, decent amount of bugs, but it's not a cyberpunk situation. But either way, it sounds like people have a lot of justifiable reasons to be upset. And so it has to be a mix of EA and DICE not necessarily taking the criticism well, and also people going over the top. Do you know what I mean? Sometimes there can be an overwhelming amount of
definitely
negative feedback, but then you've got assholes and idiots that take it too far and then paint everybody that's being negative about the game as a toxic asshole on the internet. And so it's hard to sift through that. But again, like I said, this move is not going to be beneficial for them.
Yeah, Battlefield 2042 is selling well enough, but I don't know. I find this brewing adversarial thing over the top. Again, it's a theme. But Chris, what I would say is people need to say what you want on Twitter or Reddit or whatever these places, if that's what you need to do. But I still argue that the most powerful thing that you can do is to take your money and keep it in your pocket next time they release a game. If you really hate Battlefield 2042 or hate EA, stop buying their games. I don't understand what people don't understand about that very simple premise. And that's the only effective way you can communicate with these companies at this point. And EA will never learn a lesson until it learns a lesson that it simply cannot avoid on its ledger. What do you think?
I would agree, but I do think social capital is more important now than it used to be. I think we saw that with specifically Ubisoft in that game that they announced and 3 days later subsequently took the trailer down and were like, we messed up a little bit here. Whoops. And they kind of backtracked pretty quick. And that was, you couldn't spend money on that game at all. As far as I knew, it wasn't even available for pre-order. So I think it was free to play even. So it stands to reason that, money is obviously the bottom line. It's the thing that these companies care about most. But if a backlash is big enough, it is, it does carry similar or comparable weight in certain situations. More so, I guess, in pre-release than post-release once they've already sold you the thing, for sure. But, I don't blame these people for trying, and I don't blame these people for taking their complaints to the one place that they have left, which is a forum about they can't go to the DICE YouTube channel and mass dislike a video anymore because that doesn't show up.
Right. That's
so,
a good point.
Which, by the way, is a total corporate move, by the way.
Oh my God, of course. Can you imagine what that remove? I agree with you. So transparent, of course.
So, I don't know. I get it, man. And if you're one of these people who just wanted to, you know what? The thing that's really depressing about this is it really, the way that the games industry kind of launches products in a way really disincentivizes optimism. It really snuffs out any semblance of goodwill that people are willing to levy. And that's just led to a really depressing marketplace and a really depressing place to spend your time sometimes, because it's like, dude, you have a responsibility to make money. I get it. You're a company, but you should also be thinking about what effect your business practice and your business practices and your business plans have on the industry and the greater community as a whole, because everybody's so cynical now, and they're not even wrong to be cynical, because every time they find a reason to be excited or hopeful, it's just really, it's misplaced. it's a really I'm getting on a bit of a tangent here, but it's just I'm really disappointed in the way that a lot of these companies have decided to handle criticism and just launching new products completely unfinished, completely broken. It's upsetting. I don't know where I'm going with this. I just kind of got off on a track.
Well, I think people, what you're saying is both true and will resonate with people, because you're right. Like there needs to be a more compelling and more immediate way to fight back than to slowly whittle away their earnings, and
yeah,
it requires like a boycott, if you want to even call it that, would require everyone's buy-in, and people just don't have what it takes in the natural, in the not natural, but the modern environment for a boycott. Like we just don't have what it takes, and it's just not going to happen. It's very rare for that to ever happen and ever work, and so you need to just kind of, I don't know, I would keep your powder dry and just save your money and give it to the companies that earn it and deserve it. There are many good publishers, especially in the A space and in the indie space, that do good jobs, and
totally.
And there are just countless games that deserve your money. So if you're tired of this stuff, then just stop purchasing it. But yeah, I'll be curious to see how this all goes with Battlefield, and we'll keep an eye on that as well. A couple more things here, I think, or just one more thing I wanted to note. SEGA has a new team internal, and it is called Sapporo Studio. We don't know what they're working on, but we'll obviously have more to say about them, assuming in the coming years. But let's get into, finally, we're more than an hour into this, I think, what games we're playing. We have a nice array of games here to talk about. I'll start with you, Dustin. What have you been playing?
So I finally finished up It Takes Two last night, and I just had a tiny bit left. And it was one of those things where we didn't stop playing it for any particular reason, but other things come up, you get busy, you get sidetracked, and then just kind of falls by the wayside. And then you have to do that hurdle the first time you play where it's like, what am I doing? What's going on here? And so Holly and I took care of that, and it's just a very great game. We'll talk about that some more at another point. The one that I'm excited to share with the audience in particular is a game called After the Fall. And this is a VR game. It's available on, as far as I know, basically every major VR platform, including PlayStation VR. And this is from Vertigo Games, which some of you may remember them as the developers of Arizona Sunshine. And they've done a bunch of different VR games. Now I look at it, they're also credited on Star Trek Bridge Crew, and they've just done a bunch of stuff. But of course, the major one is Arizona Sunshine. So After the Fall is a co-op VR shooter that, to put quite simply, is Left 4 Dead VR. And man, this game is pretty dang cool. I played this with, it was our boy Jimmy Champagne, Lockmort, and Ben, our associate producer, and we had an absolute blast playing this game. It's the same format where you start in a safe house and you go from safe house to safe house. And I don't know, I guess in some ways you could say it's maybe not creative in that it is just the formula of another game, but I don't really care, since it's the VR adds a whole new element to it. I guess where one of the major things they added is that you do have a full upgrade system and modification with your weapons that you can take into each round. And I've really only kind of scratched the surface of that, but it is intense. This is one you got to be careful if you're not playing VR regularly, which I have been lately, but by the end of about an hour-long play session, I was feeling a little on the queasy side just from all of the VR movement and stuff, but it is really, really awesome. It really blew me away. There's a different, one of the interesting elements also is that you can change the way you reload and you get different benefits on your choice. So there's like an easy reload mode where you just tap your gun to your chest and it automatically reloads. Or there's a more realistic reload where you have to drop the clip, grab a clip, and then pull the whatever back. I don't know how guns work. And then
Do that.
what is it when you
Don't you own
psh,
guns?
I can't. What's the name of the?
I don't know what loading a gun.
The part of the gun that slides back.
Oh,
so you can.
Oh, I don't know. I have no idea.
I know what you mean. Like it's
why
like we
can't
all
I think
own
of the word?
shoes.
It's right here. Anyway.
It's like we all own shoes, but like who the hell knows
I'm gonna
that
look
little piece
it up
of
right
those
here.
shoelace is called an aglet.
Someone is screaming in
Part of a
agony.
gun. Let's look right now. I'm sure they are. Let's see. Parts.
The anatomy of a gun.
Ejection port, rear sight. Why is this so? Why is this so low
You cock
res?
it.
Yeah. I know. I'm trying to find. I don't know.
Goodness.
I'm looking here.
Whatever.
It
The
says,
thing.
this looks like guns so like.
I think it's the slide. I think it's
stop,
This slide?
stop, barrel,
Okay.
front sight. I mean,
Yeah.
getting a little
Anyway.
hammer.
Yeah. So you
you reload the guns realistically is what
you
you're trying to
reload
say.
the guns realistically, and this can get
Holy
very
moly.
frantic if you're dual wielding because you've got to manage both sides and pull out clips and stuff. But this game's fucking awesome. I haven't played the PSVR version. I've only played the Oculus Quest version, but it is playable on that platform. It is cross play as well. So if you have
that's awesome.
friends on Quest or Vive or whatever, you can all play together through their
I don't have
party
any
system.
friends. I don't have any friends. So.
We got to try that, Dustin. I had no idea.
Dude, yeah, you can play with us anytime, dude. We've
sounds awesome.
only played one time for, I think that was like late last week, and it was for an hour or two. But we've been desperately wanting to try to figure out a night that we can all play again, and you are definitely welcome.
Hell yeah.
Oh, sorry, I'm just writing a note. Okay, Dustin, that's everything you've played. Chris.
Yeah.
Oh wait, I'm sorry. What do you have more to say?
No, that's it.
Then why did you?
Well, the way you said it, you said Dustin, like that's all you've played, and I was like, well, I've also played a little bit of Persona 5 Strikers, but I didn't write it. So you kind of prodded me there.
I would not really. I wasn't because it wasn't a question. I was like, Dustin, that's all you've played, and I was going to move on to.
Well, I
and
felt
then I was
like
like, oh, you
had
have something more to say? And you're like, no, but you were interrupting nonetheless.
It's all
I'm
falling
interrupting.
apart.
Okay.
Okay. All right.
All right. Okay.
Chris, what have you been playing?
Oh my god! Now I got to cut this tension. Jesus. I've been playing a couple things. I've been playing a little bit of Death's Door. I'm playing it on Switch actually because every time I see Death's Door, I'm like, that's a perfect Switch game. So I'm playing it every night before I go to bed, just a little bit. It's just really enjoyable, isometric. It reminds me of like Zelda and Bastion put together in like it's like really atmospheric and really cool. I really love the character designs in it and the enemy designs. It's like really, really surreal, some of them. But I'm only in the early stages of it. I played it a long time ago. I don't even remember the context of it. I played it a little bit and I enjoyed it, but I never picked it up. But everybody's been talking about it lately. My roommate or my ex-roommate, my friend Sweeney was playing it as well. And I was like, I'm just going to play it. And I enjoy it. I'm jumping back into Fallout New Vegas just because it's back compat.
Whoa.
And it's a classic game that I never finished. I never finished New Vegas. And I feel like I probably should. Just because it's one of those seminal RPGs that I feel like most people really, really love. And it's still very competitive with a lot of games to this day. There are people who would argue that most modern RPGs, especially things like Outer Worlds, for as fun or as good as they are, they don't even come close to New Vegas. So I'm getting back into it. I like it. I'm in the first hour, so I'm not super into it. What I really want to talk about is Prey. I finally sunk my teeth into Prey. I did a stream. I've played for about 5 hours. And Prey is incredible. And I can't believe I didn't see it the first time I tried it. It is such a competent and well-designed immersive sim. And I really am just staggered by how good it is and how I failed to see it the first time I played. Because the first time I played, I was really off. I didn't really understand what immersive sims were as a genre. I was going into it like I would go into like a Fallout game or like a more open-ended first-person shooter type thing. And I was focusing on combat and all these weird things that I expect from the first-person perspective as somebody who's spent a lot of time playing Call of Duty, playing Halo, playing Battlefield. And the second you realize that the game is just open in ways that you wouldn't expect, and you're rewarded for reading, and everything that you read is valuable. And I remember this one instance where I was going through this guy's office on this space station. I was like going through this, like reading all of his emails and stuff. And he's talking about this guy's like really meticulous, and he's got a really neurotic personality. And he's like, I want you to custom make a thermos for me, and it needs to hold this specific amount of grams or whatever. And it's just this constant email thread being like, weigh it again. It's all wrong. It's this really neurotic psycho. And I find the thermos, and I found a scale somewhere else on the station. I was like, oh, I'll weigh it or whatever. And it opened up this secret thing that gave me all these upgrades and stuff. And the fact that it rewards you for paying attention to little things like that. And you could bypass entire sections of the game if you just think of a way around it. And it usually works. There's a gun almost entirely dedicated to just pushing buttons through small spaces. And I'm flabbergasted by just how good this is. I was thinking to myself as I was playing, this is the first time I have felt like I'm playing BioShock again. It really is that level of just awe. And I'm super excited. I think the second I'm done with this episode, I'm going to jump back into it, because I'm really just enamored by this game in such a way that I'm almost at kind of a loss for words. I almost want to write something up about it, because it's just incredible design.
Well, I'm glad you're liking
it. I can't believe I didn't see it.
I didn't see. I mean, when I played it, because I played it for 5 or 10 hours maybe when it came out, and I remember thinking it was like, oh, this is very much like BioShock. But as I recall, I reached a point where the combat was just, I was like, oh, I can't play this. There was a point where that's what I specifically remember. I don't remember the ins and outs of it at all, but I remember being like, oh, I reach those points in games every once in a while where I just can't move on. And it has been a game, I was saying on our Discord actually to someone, it's just a game that's on my mind a lot. I think I might have said that on the last episode too, when you were talking about going back.
Yeah.
I was just like this. I'm with you. Maybe I have to give that game another chance.
If I remember correctly, the PS4 version of that game is not great. In fact, it doesn't have bad input lag. Like, it just feels kind of gross. That's what I recall. And they never updated it. I think they did update it on Xbox now, of course, since they're owned.
Yeah, it's still 30 frames per second, even on PS5, which is a shame. But honestly, and this might just be me, but there are certain games, specifically of the first-person variety, that feel... you could tell when games are designed for controller and when they're not. I feel like a lot of Valve games, for example, are very clearly mouse and keyboard. Like, you can't play a game like Half-Life 2 on a controller. Like, it just all of it feels wrong. Like, the interacting with everything needs to be so precise. And you could tell from a design foundation that those games were not meant for controllers. And there are other games like, Halo and Call of Duty that are very clearly designed, maybe with a little bit of both in mind, but definitely more towards controller. Playing Prey, I tried it with controller at first, even on PC at like 60 frames. And I got to say, like, I did not like it on controller. The second I switched to keyboard and mouse, it felt it made infinitely more sense. And that might have been the barrier too that I was experiencing on PS4 when I played it the first time was, man, this doesn't run super well. And the controls are a little awkward, which I get is like not the best recommendation if you have to play it on a certain input. But I will say, just the switch to that input method kind of allowed that kinesthetic link between my head and the game to be a little bit more uninterrupted, and allowed me to like immerse myself in that place a little bit more effectively than I would have on base PS4. But I do think the design of this game is just really, really impressive. I can't wait to finish it, because I think I want to really do a proper video on this, because it is a very captivating experience. And I don't know, I'm really surprised that I didn't notice it the first time, because I'm usually more open to these things. And I remember playing it the first time, I was like, I don't like this at all. I see little bits of art direction that I really like, and little bits of music, which is the music's done by Mick Gordon, and there's just such an expertly crafted atmosphere on the Talos one that I liked it, but I just couldn't play it, and now I can. I'm just really glad I get to experience it for the first time properly. because there are a lot of people who would want that, to experience a game like this for the first time again.
Definitely. We always talk about that. Well, I'm glad you're enjoying it. You do sound quite captivated with it.
Yeah.
All right. For me, Persona 4 Golden still, nothing new to report. I think I'm through the 5th dungeon now, approaching maybe, I don't know, somewhere in the 50s. I don't know, some hours. I play it every day. Far Cry 6, I'm going through the post-game stuff. I'm a little annoyed because I told you guys that I like the idea of being an insurgency after you beat the game and the enemy crops back up in certain places and you have to go and squash them. But it is actually real time. It seems like I might be able to manipulate the clock on my PS5, but I'm not going to do that. Like I took out the insurgency and it's like, okay, you have 4 days now to wait to do another one. And I'm like, that's kind of annoying because I really want to play it right now. So I started doing some of these other one-off missions in there, and I'm tempted to kind of buy the DLC, which goes back and explores stuff with the villains from 3, 4, and 5. But it's really it's expensive. It's like $30 or $40. I'm not paying that for a season pass to Far Cry. I mean, I really love Far Cry 6, but nonetheless, I'm still playing it most days, at least for an hour or so. I did play Guardians of the Galaxy for about an hour, and I got it. I was really into it. It's making me laugh, and I don't really have any familiarity with these characters, so I especially liked the kind of dire, straightforward one, who's like a big
Drax.
Yeah, that guy was great.
Oh yeah,
he's great.
Drax is great.
He was hysterical. I loved that character. I thought it was awesome. Really loved the intro to the game as well. Kind of getting to know Star-Lord, I guess. But I started playing it. Then you go into the second mission where you actually have combat, and I'm like, no. But as soon as the game started to really be played, I just wasn't feeling it. It felt very sloppy. I'm sure it gets more dynamic, but I just wasn't into it. And so I was satisfied at that point. I was like, okay, cool. I'm sure it's great. I'm sure people like it. I get it. I think I'm just going to move on. So I X'd out. No trophies earned, thank God. So I moved on. Now, the big surprise here that I have to drop on everyone, Discord already knows, but I've been playing Halo Combat Evolved. I started it last night. I haven't played it since 2003. I'm playing it on Micah's Xbox Series X. And first of all, it's interesting because I didn't remember the beginning mission at all. I remembered the first mission being the second mission, which was interesting.
Yeah.
So was that true in the first game? Because I don't know. I remember that mission being, I guess it's the same thing, but I remember that mission being on the Halo, I guess, or whatever it is itself, with the Warthog and all that kind of stuff to be the beginning of the game, but I guess it's not.
The first level was always like the corridor kind of find your bearings. That was like the big thing early on, was everybody thought it was going to be this corridor shooter like every other shooter was, and then it opens up in the second level to this crazy open thing. And that is what people remember is because the first level really is a tutorial.
Right. Because I remember that, and I remember specifically I was just playing and kind of looking around, playing with the graphics. I'm trying to play with the old graphics, and just I love the halo just going into the distance and going around, and you just see or whatever that rim go all the way around. And I also like how it represents the breadth of it, that it's so wide that it seems deceiving when you look at it from space. So I'm into it. It's cool. Now the big surprise here is that I got Game Pass, and here's the reason, is because I made a name, and I'm not going to share it right now, but I made a name, and then I was like, all right, I'll buy it. I'm happy to buy the game. Happy to buy Master Chief Collection. $39.99 for Master Chief Collection. And on the storefront, I don't mess around with the Xbox storefront ever, and I don't ever really see it because Micah buys games physically. So because she's on Xbox all the time, but I just don't really see the interface. It literally says, for people that are unaware, I'm sure a lot of you are, it just says $39.99 or free on Game Pass, or get it with Game Pass or whatever. And then I click on the Game Pass thing, and it's like, oh, $1 for the first month. And I'm like, okay, I'll definitely do that. This reinforced in my mind that the numbers are inflated in some way, because who the fuck wouldn't pay $1 for their first month? However, I'm definitely canceling it. Like, I'm not sticking around. I don't want another subscription service in my life.
Take that, Phil.
Right now. But I was disappointed because Micah was there, and I was like, you know what? I would have gladly paid $20 for this, even knowing that I could have gotten it for $1. But $40 for the Master Chief Collection? Are you nuts? And I know what they're trying to do, and it worked. But I don't know. I just wanted to say that it's really just agnostic. It's not good or bad. I just feel like they missed out on potentially $39 more from me, because I am canceling Game Pass. And it has nothing to do with partisanship. I don't really want Game Pass. I don't even have PlayStation Now. So it's funny that, and I had Micah take a picture. I was like taking my wallet out or whatever, and I was like, "This is the moment that I got Game Pass," which I thought was funny, but for the audience on Discord. But nonetheless, when Spartacus comes out, I'll maybe mess with it. But I'm not really attracted to having a huge array of games. I find that overwhelming. But for me as a gamer, money is not really an issue as far as buying the products I want to buy, because I don't buy I used to buy everything when I was a kid. I used to buy so many games when I was young, and I didn't even open half of them. Now I buy what I really want to play. So it has nothing to do with that. It's just a time thing. And I feel like having Game Pass would break me. I really do. I feel, and that's why I want to see what Spartacus is all about, because I feel like it's going to break me in my own space. But one thing I want to leave with on this, and the Halo conversation will happen on Knockback in more depth with my brother Dagan, but who's never played it, and I'm excited to hear his thoughts on it. But I will say that with Game Pass, and with the Xbox interface and with all of that, it's quite nice. Yeah, it works out really well. But it's just not for me. And I was saying to Micah that playing on Xbox feels like it's not even, it doesn't count and it's fake. That's what I was telling her. I was like, this doesn't. I was earning achievements in Halo, and I'm like, this doesn't. I don't even care. Like, it just doesn't feel like I'm spending time with a game, because I'm so in this one silo that anything else feels. The last time I played a game that wasn't on a PlayStation console was Earthbound in 2020, probably. So yeah.
What?
Yeah.
That's wild. Yeah. That can't be true.
Yeah, I think it is. Yeah.
Oh my God.
Wow.
That's fair, I guess. The fact that you could play a game and get an achievement in it and not care, though, it might be something that you should look into, man. That might be like a.
The only thing that can save me is just defecting.
Yeah. No, I mean, just I don't know, man. I'm kind of the same way, where it's the subscription thing in general. We don't have to talk too much about it, but there are a lot of subscriptions now, and it can get annoying. The only reason I even have Game Pass, I think, is just because it's the only game related subscription I have. You know, I don't think I have anything. I mean, aside from like PlayStation Plus, but I don't even count that really, because you need that to play online. So it's almost like a service cost for the console. But I don't know. It's becoming like cable packages again.
Right.
It's just really disappointing.
Exactly. It's like we got away from this, and then and now it's just all funneling back towards this old style. We thought we wanted a la carte, but it's almost, and we do, but you have to watch it. Like, I've been watching it. I've been canceling things that I don't really use, like stack subscriptions and stuff. I try to give money to people I really like, but yeah, I got to kind of check that and just whittle away at it. But I would say that if Spartacus is not going to be like Game Pass, and that it's not going to have new games, I imagine. So, or very many new games, and certainly not first and second party new releases. But if we had a Game Pass on PlayStation that was the same for PlayStation, then I would have to have it, because why wouldn't you? Because they're just giving you the first party games when they come out. You'd be actually stupid as fuck not having Game Pass in that situation. It doesn't really make any sense.
Yeah.
So, but they want you. They're pulling the strings because that's what they want. So it's working out well for them. I just wanted to give a shout out to Xbox, because I don't use the interface at all, and I found my way around. So, and I'm stupid as fuck. All right. Let's get into the news. A few things to get into here of import. I'm really interested in this first story and what you guys think of it. Number one, the storied PlayStation vehicular combat franchise Twisted Metal, which essentially invented the genre upon the first game's release on PS1 in 1995, has been in the news quite a bit lately for two reasons. As you'll recall, PlayStation Productions, the brand's in-house cross-media unit, is pursuing a Twisted Metal TV show executive produced by Will Arnett, starring Anthony Mackie as the protagonist, the so-called John Doe. Not surprisingly, it's slated to be an action comedy, and it's currently being shopped. However, there are deeper Twisted Metal rumors in our midst, because you may also recall that a Twisted Metal game was reportedly in production at Sony's second-party partner Lucid, the team behind the dud PlayStation 5 vehicular combat title Destruction All-Stars. The game was being primed for a concurrent release to the TV show, yet in an unusual but certainly not unprecedented move, website Video Games Chronicle reports Sony has stripped Lucid of the project and brought it in-house. To where, you may ask? To Firesprite, according to website Push Square, the newly purchased Sony studio already confirmed to be working on PlayStation VR 2 marquee title, Horizon Call of the Mountain. Further pushing this rumor is that Matt Southern, who was at Lucid and who once worked with defunct Sony studio Evolution on MotorStorm, has jumped from Lucid to Firesprite, maybe in an act of continuity. Games moving between studios is very unusual, but it does happen. Final Fantasy VII Remake is probably the most recent notable example of a game that changed developers and succeeded, though more often than not, the exact opposite occurs. Twisted Metal, co-created by friend of the show David Jaffe and Scott Campbell, was one of Sony's earliest smash hit franchises and saw peak popularity during the PlayStation 2 era, particularly with 2001's Twisted Metal Black. The last time the franchise had any life was when Twisted Metal came to PlayStation 3 10 years ago in 2012. Cass Whelan wrote in and said, "Hey CDC, how do you feel about the recent news that Firesprite has taken over development of Twisted Metal? VGC sources state that this makes 4 unannounced games being developed by some 265 people at the studio." It strikes me as that they're at capacity now, but Dustin, let's start with you on this one. What do you think of this? I think when I saw this news, I was like, oh, it's very smart. I don't think Lucid is up to the task. Destruction All-Stars was a complete disappointment, I think. I understand some people like it, but I'm talking from Sony's perspective. They were intending on selling that game for $70, and then they gave it away, basically. So it's obviously dead on the vine. Lucid is mostly a port and smaller game studio. They did make the Vita game Jacob Jones, which I really liked, but they otherwise haven't done anything big. And if I were concerned for anyone, I wouldn't be concerned for Firesprite. I would be concerned for Lucid because I don't know that they can survive this. So we'll see what happens with them. But what do you think, Dustin, about the seemingly verifiable news that this game is being brought to Firesprite to be better treated?
My biggest question is why it was ever given to Lucid in the first place. In that, surely, when do you think this decision was made?
Probably recently. I would argue that it's obvious. Here's what I think happened with Destruction All-Stars. I think Destruction All-Stars was coming along. I think Sony maybe thought it was better than it was. It might have even mock reviewed better than they thought it was going to be, or had early positive focus testing. They put it up for pre-order. No one was buying it. They realized they sunk a bunch of money into this thing. They release it. No one really cares. Even if it's free, it has seasons and downloadable content. And they're like, these guys are killing, or these guys couldn't even do it without an IP. We're certainly not going to give them Twisted Metal. I think so. I would imagine it's a recent discussion, and might have had a lot to do with why they're bringing Firesprite inside, because, they're making Twisted Metal for us. And they're working on Horizon and all. It's all right. Well, bring them in.
Right.
So that's what I would think.
Yeah, I think it's the right thing to do. I'm wondering if they'll still be able to hit the same time frame as the TV show. I guess it depends on how much they're going to use from the Lucid version of the game, we'll say. And maybe, I don't know, we have no idea how far along they were with that game. I would assume probably not too far, since they just, I guess it was about a year, it was over a year ago now that they shipped Destruction All-Stars. Wait, they delayed that game. It wasn't launch titles. That was what, February?
Yeah, I think so.
So less than a year ago.
It was February.
I feel like they probably didn't even have very much, but
yeah, which is why I think it's February too. It's why it's why I think it's safe to do that. Because of course CyberConnect was making Final Fantasy VII Remake, and they took much longer to take it away from them. Thank God. Thank Christ that happened.
I remember that first trailer.
It turned into turned into a wonderful game. I mean, Final Fantasy VII Remake is no joke good. So we'll see what happens here. But Chris, do you have anything to add about this Twisted Metal game that they're certainly trying to get out in line with this show they're shopping? I assume this show could be 18 months away from airing, because once they find a network, you imagine they'll take 6 to 8 months to produce and post-produce and all that. So what do you think about maybe a Twisted Metal game 2024, something like that?
Yeah, I think there's definitely enough time to make a Twisted Metal game in that time. I think the only kind of loose strand here is what kind of Twisted Metal are we going to see? Because Sony has a bit of a formula, and it's a good formula and it works, and they tend to focus on really, really high production value. Could you have a game like Twisted Metal with that amount of polish in this time frame? Is that something they even really want? Are they trying to keep it a little bit more casual, maybe make it, because the way that I see it is, if they were eyeing Lucid at all, Twisted Metal was never going to be this big thing that they were going to sink like a ton of, Lucid's a very small studio. They haven't really proved themselves. Even the game that they put out wasn't like, the highest production value looker in the world. So you had to assume it was going to be a little bit more casual, a little bit more of a pseudo mobile experience. are they doing that with Firesprite, or has the scope changed? These are questions that I would have if I was working at Sony internally. This is a first party IP. This is a legacy IP we haven't done anything with in a very, very long time. How do we want to transition this style of play to modern audiences when we've developed this formula and this expectation of, first party polish? I don't know. It's I am sure we're going to get this game on time. I don't think it's delayed in any real way. I think this is more than enough time to make a functioning Twisted Metal game. I'm just curious as to the execution of it and how it's going to look, because we've not really seen a modern take on Twisted Metal.
No, it's been
really ever.
2012 was the last time we saw it. It was during that era when Sony was just throwing a lot of things at the wall. David Jaffe did direct that Twisted Metal. He apparently has nothing to do with this one, which I'm not crazy about that decision, since he is the heart and soul of that series. But they did this. They're looking at it and there's like, he was one of the creators of God of War, and we revived that without him too. But I look at this, and Chris, your aesthetic kind of argument, I think, is interesting, because that's what I would fear about a game coming out of Lucid, is they just don't seem to have design chops. Like, it's Destruction All-Stars just looks like Fortnite, and it's boring, and that's not what Twisted Metal is. Twisted Metal is like the exact opposite of that. I'm not saying that they can't do anything different. I'm just saying that they're not really structured to do that. I will be interested to see what happens to the studio, because hopefully nothing bad, but you lose your contract with Sony, and you're scrambling probably to get new work, and that might be a scary thing. Although maybe Sony just said, we'll put you on something else that's less important. So we'll see what happens with that.
We'll put you on Last of Us remake.
Yeah, well, why don't you go work on Uncharted? Number 2, what's going on with Ben's studio, Days Gone, and Jeff Ross and John Garvin? We discussed all of these topics last week, of course, but with Ross's and Garvin's appearance on David Jaffe's streaming show, we now have much more to talk about. A distilled version of what's important is as follows. As we discussed last week, Ghost of Tsushima's sales milestone of 8 million drew out a comparison from Jeff Ross, director of Days Gone, which apparently also sold as much but wasn't celebrated. This naturally brought out comparisons between the two Sony-owned studios behind the games, Sucker Punch and Bend, and much spilled out during Jaffe's stream. So here's what's interesting. Ben pitched Days Gone 2. Sony said no. Sony then said they'd accept another pitch, including a reboot of Syphon Filter, but the team couldn't wrap their minds around how to even do that. So when they pitched a new Resistance game, which was also turned down, and now we are where we are. Bend is working on an all-new AAA open-world single-player game. Yet much was made about the numbers Ross claimed, which he later clarified on Twitter, stating that he stood by those numbers. This is important because it was brought up that Days Gone is part of PlayStation Plus's collection, was given away as part of PlayStation Plus separately, and has been severely discounted as well, calling into question the veracity and usefulness of the data. So the answer is we don't really know what's going on, other than that it's always fun to get a peek behind the curtain. Days Gone launched on PS4 in 2019 after a tortured 6 or 7 year dev cycle at least. Bend is, of course, best known for its run of Syphon Filter games on PS1, PS2, and PSP, and for its wonderful handheld iterations in the Resistance and Uncharted franchises too. Dustin, this Resistance game was apparently going to be open world. I can tell you, I've reported it on the show before. It's not the first time that a Resistance game has been pitched and turned down. Sony had been investigating Resistance's revival at Insomniac years ago. The Resistance wasn't pursued at that time because they felt like it conflicted with The Last of Us as far as thematics are concerned. I don't know that that's actually really true anymore. Days Gone is much more of an interference with The Last of Us than anything from Resistance, which is about an alien invasion, not about zombies. So what do you make of this new news? I will report that Jeff Ross will indeed be on this show. And he was going to be on, then he canceled. Then I kind of went to him and I was like, what really ended up happening was I read a story with him in the USA Today, and I was like, this story is kind of boring, dude. Like I'll ask you much better questions than whatever this guy asked you. And he was like, yeah, all right, well, let's do it. So he's going to come on the show in the coming weeks. But Dustin, what do you make of this kind of saga that's going on? And people kind of, I think, turning it to make Ben not look very good. And I'm wondering how you take that.
Yeah. The biggest question I have is just the question of the 8 million, right? Some people accused him of using a, was it like a trophy tracking
website? Yeah. A trophy tracking website. I don't think so, though. I don't think that that's true because there's no trophy tracking website that shows that game had 8 million users. Like what trophy tracking website even shows that? None. as far as I know. So anyway, go on.
Yeah, so it just felt weird because there was that accusation, and then he said he stood by his numbers, and obviously there's factors we talked about last week as far as, was the game on sale? Are we including times it was given away? Whatever. There's a lot of different factors about that. The other interesting tidbit is this idea of the Resistance game. And my biggest question is, did Sony say no because they have other plans for Resistance? Did they, after what happened with Days Gone, not trust Bend with that IP? Did they felt it conflicted? Because I feel like that's just an easy win, but again, a risky one based on the reception of Days Gone. People, regardless of how you felt about Days Gone, whether you think it's amazing or horrible, for a lot of people, that game has some stink on it based on how it launched. So there would be some resistance to the new Resistance game with Bend attached as the developer.
By the way, I'm just looking. Exophase has 145,000 players tracked for it. PSN Profiles has 292,000 tracked, which sounds about right. I mean, that's not, by the way, cumulative. That's people that are opting into the trophies websites. They don't scrape accounts automatically. Nothing does that. That's why I'm curious where people are looking at that. Because if that were true, and people were using data from like VG charts and all that, that's all. I don't think people realize VG charts is made up. It's just like guesses. They used to actually base it on like these algorithms about calling individual stores and doing all this weird shit. But if the numbers don't come from a publisher or from a nationally respected and recognized thing like Media Creates in Japan, then I wouldn't trust the numbers at all. Mm-hmm. Chris, what do you make of this saga with Bend and with Days Gone, Syphon Filter, Resistance? I'll note that Resistance was, when Resistance 3 was being made, it was intended on continuing. In fact, Resistance 3 originally ended a different way, and they had to do a different ending to cap it all off. I think there was intentions on going to the Chimeran homeworld and all of this, and I think I learned that when I was writing the history of Insomniac a long time ago. But because we actually never, the interesting thing in Resistance is we never see the Chimera. We see only the things that they create out of human husks. And I think we see the Chimera called the Angels, but we never really see them. And so when you see the Chimera, it's not really them. And that was what was so fascinating about that franchise. So anyway, go on. What do you have to say about this?
I would echo a lot of what Dustin said. I think I'm really curious as to why their Resistance pitch was not taken more seriously, because apparently their Resistance game on Vita, right? It was Vita,
Resistance Retribution.
Yeah, apparently people like that one.
That's great.
Like,
it was a great game. It was I think it was like a third-person shooter, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, so if they have a history of working in this IP to success, like, why would you? That seems like a no-brainer. Like, why would you not do that? Days Gone is way more of a conflicting theme, like you said, to The Last of Us, or even the majority of their game. Like, it's a first-person shooter. It already sticks out. So why would you? That's just so confusing. Unless they have other plans, which who the hell is to say at this point? But the thing to me that stuck out is this part where they're talking about how they wouldn't be able to wrap their minds around how to do Syphon Filter. What do you mean?
I guess they just had no compelling pitch for it. Like, they just didn't know what to do.
That's a better. I mean, I guess it's semantics, I guess, but a better way to say that would be like, we didn't want to do that. We didn't have any ideas to make it fresh, but just the idea, like, we couldn't wrap our minds around how to make this game that we've been making for a long time, and that we're known for primarily.
He says something interesting about it, actually, where, and maybe I'll clarify when I talk to him, something about how it didn't feel real. Like, they were basically being like, "Oh yeah, go tell us how you would remake Syphon Filter," and like we're almost like wasting their time. But there's more to it. We'll definitely get into it with him.
Yeah. I mean, I'm curious. Obviously, we can only get so much context out of a limited time interview. But I think, I don't know. This whole thing is really strange. I hope that means that they're doing something with Resistance, but my gut tells me it's just they didn't trust them. after Days Gone, which is strange because again, I feel like the game's divisive, but it's not like it's not the worst game in the world. It's not like people absolutely hate it. I feel like it's getting a lot more disdain internally from Sony than it deserves. It's a very strange thing that's happening with this game, and I don't really understand. What's going on with Bend even right now?
They're working on a game, a AAA game, new game.
Yeah,
which is fine. I think it's going to be in the same league as Days Gone. I'm disappointed that there's not going to be more Days Gone. I think they also say that like the move from Sean Layden to Jim Ryan kind of hurt them. It seems like Sony side Sony side management at Bend, because remember Bend wasn't always owned by Sony, and they used to be called Eidetic, and they apparently were just not into it. John Garvin was just fired straight up, I think, after Days Gone came out. So it's there's much to get into, and that's why I emailed Jeff Ross, because I was like, just respectfully, I can just ask you much better questions than these guys are asking. Not David Jaffe, but others, where I'm like, don't. That's what with Hassan Karaman, when I've talked to him too, it's the same thing where I've emailed him and I'm like, I'll just ask you better questions. Stop wasting everyone's time. Let's just do it. Let's talk.
Yeah.
Me and you. All right. Number 3. It's no secret that the entire global economy is under a severe supply crunch when it comes to silicon chips and other electronic components essential to the construction of sophisticated electronics like the PlayStation 5. Indeed, we already know that Sony cut its PS5 sales forecast for the fiscal year, not due to demand, but because they literally cannot make enough. And now new reporting out of Bloomberg Japan indicates that Sony is dealing with the lack of PlayStation 5 consoles in perhaps a predictable way. It's making many more PS4s than it intended, and is going to be doing so for longer than it had hoped. The article in part notes, quote, the Japanese conglomerate, whose flagship PS5 console has been in scarce supply since its debut in November of 2020, told assembly partners late last year that it would continue making its earlier generation machine through this year, according to people familiar with the matter. While Sony never officially announced when it would stop making the PS4, it had previously planned to discontinue assembly at the end of 2021, they said, asking not to be named as the plans are not public, end quote. This will allow Sony to ship about 1 million additional PlayStation 4 consoles to help ameliorate some demand. For its part, Sony claims it had no concrete plans to stop PS4 production to begin with. Bloomberg writes in part, quote, a Sony spokesperson confirmed PS4 production would continue this year and said they had never planned to stop making the console. It is one of the best-selling consoles ever, and there is always crossover between generations, the company said, end quote. Bloomberg pegs PlayStation 4 at more than 116 million consoles sold, making it the second best-selling home console of all time, only behind PlayStation 2, and only the fourth to surpass 100 million sold, which also happened to PS1 and Wii. Bloomberg assesses Sony's situation as such, quote, the PlayStation unit is grappling with a series of unanticipated challenges, including a slower than expected PS5 production pace and online scalpers choking off retail supply of the newer consoles. Extending PS4 availability is seen within the company as a means to fill the supply vacuum and keep gamers within the PlayStation ecosystem, according to a Sony official who is not authorized to speak publicly, end quote. The article notes that Sony is simply unable to swing even its financial heft around on markets. There simply aren't enough components for sale, even at a premium, and even for a company with the manufacturing might, history, and respect Sony has. So the article basically says that Sony has gone to these companies and been like, we'll pay you more. Like, we'll literally pay you more than everyone else is paying you for your components. And they're like, we can't sell them because we don't have them. And it's becoming a massive problem. Dustin, I'm curious, Sony seems a little frightened, and I don't blame them, because they can't meet demand. This is a good thing because there is demand, but the demand will not be permanent. People will eventually seek solutions to the demand if Sony itself will not solve it. And they're hoping that PlayStation 4 will do that, because PlayStation 4's availability and sales have fallen off a cliff. We noted, I think, last quarter, they only sold like a couple 100,000. So now they have to rev up this engine. This has two, I think, ramifications. Number one, this cross-generation shit is never going to end. Number two is that I don't think they're right that the PS4 is going to help, because I think they're looking at Xbox Series S and saying like, well, people are buying that, but that's not a PlayStation 4. That's like a PlayStation 4 Pro, and it just doesn't, and they have Game Pass and they have these more tantalizing options. I think Sony, as they say, are afraid that people are just be like, fuck it, I'll just go and buy an Xbox.
Right. I feel like that's much more likely of a situation than someone getting a PS4 at this point. But this is, I feel like, a little bit of a blind spot for at least me. I don't know about you guys, but I'm very curious about how the more average consumer, the people that are passively interested in video games, are reacting to this shortage situation and how that affects their buying habits. It's the shortage situation. I haven't really figured out how it's even affecting core gamers like us as well. For example, I was in a Best Buy last week and I was helping my friend return a broken TV, but they had a stockpile of Series S, like a bunch of them. And I've seen them in stores regularly. So something about those, they're available and not flying off the shelves like the Series X's. And I wonder if it's a case where Sony sees people wanting to either get a present or get a new console, and the Series S is available. And so that's what they're getting. And the question that I have then is, if their idea of a solution is supplying more PS4s, it's like people have PS4s. It's not a new present for a lot of people or a new thing. You're just trying to spread out to the market even further, trying to get even. If you haven't gotten a PS4 at this point, the types of people buying them now are not the normal demographic, I would say, just because there's so many out there. It's so saturated. So this is a confusing move, but I'm curious what their strategy would be. I'm assuming it would be smarter than me, but I don't know.
Yeah.
What do you think? What do you think, Chris? It seems like a Hail Mary, perhaps, to me.
It's hard for me to wrap my mind around, but it's one of those things where I have to assume this makes sense, and I just don't know why. You know, like I'm just too outside of the loop to understand how it makes sense to spend a lot of money making PlayStation 4s for a demographic that doesn't exist. Really, this is a very strange move to me, but of course it would be, because we're not internal. We don't know anything as far as, you know, the back end of how this works. Yeah. But when I first saw the story, I was like, what? I thought it was the dumbest thing in the world.
This comes, by the way, at a time when Xbox One's done now. Like Microsoft has announced like Xbox One. This is the exact opposite of what you would have expected to happen, really. You know? Yeah. Because I don't know. Well, because in my opinion, PlayStation 4's 116 million sold is incredibly impressive. That is an incredible number. And the reason that I say that is because I think it's more impressive than 150 million PS2s. Because PS4 has always been more expensive. PS4, you know, started at a higher price point than PS2 did. Obviously, it also sold in many emerging markets. But PS2 was a valuable component to people because they're disc-based games that are easy to play over long periods of time in emerging markets. DVD player, of course, sold many PS2s. PS4 didn't really have that advantage. It's a Blu-ray player, but it wasn't the first Blu-ray player most people had in their houses. Most people don't even give a fuck also about having a Blu-ray player. People have smart TVs, so they're not necessarily using them like they were using Xbox 360 and PS3, which was so sophisticated at the time to be able to stream things. So PS4s were sold to play games on. And that's impressive, because that wasn't what 150 million PS2s were sold, or 80 million PSPs or anything like that. And I think that this is just a Hail Mary for them to say, like, we need to give people a solution, maybe not in the West, but in other places, to buy a PlayStation console and keep them before we lose them. And I think they realize that once they get Game Pass, once they get involved in these other things, it's just going to become likely that they're going to be intractable. And it's a big risk for them. I'm sure they're freaking out about this. And I thought it was the most interesting part of the article, like I said, was just this idea that they can't even wag their dick around. They can't even say, like, we're Sony. Like, that's basically what they're saying. Like, we're Sony, we're Sony, we're Sony. And everyone's like, there's nothing we can do for you. And I will also note that Moore's Law is dead. Tom from Moore's Law is dead, you know, reminded us on a recent episode that Xbox and Microsoft are deciding the reason Xbox Series S is so common and Xbox Series X is impossible to find is because they're taking those components and putting it into xCloud. They've made the internal calculation that the console is actually less important than the service, and Sony doesn't even have to make that decision. So it really is quite puzzling, and I'll be curious to know what the next milestone is that they're going to announce. And It sounds like Microsoft might be closing the gap a little bit. Although I'm wary of these Xbox numbers that are combining S and X. I don't like that. They're not the same. PS5 and PS5 discless are the same console without a disc drive.
Right.
And I think that those are apples to apples. Anyway, we'll see what happens. Dustin, I can't wait to hear what you have to say about this.
Sure.
Although I'm sure we'll all have a little bit of input here. Today, From Software is best known as the developers of Souls-like games, 2009's PS3 exclusive Demon's Souls, the multi-platform 2011 follow-up Dark Souls, 2015's PS4 exclusive Bloodborne, and most recently 2019's Sekiro. But long before these franchises took root, FromSoft was known for two other franchises, Kingsfield and Armored Core. And it's the latter that is on track for a revival. The first Armored Core game came to PS1 in 1997 and is a third-person mech action game. You may recall that its sequel, Armored Core 2, was a PlayStation 2 launch game in 2000, while Armored Core 3 followed on PS2 in 2002, Armored Core 4 came to PS3 in 2007, and Armored Core 5 arrived on PS3 in 2012. Since then, nothing but silence. Not a huge surprise considering Armored Core 5 was in development while Demon's Souls and Dark Souls were taking the world by storm. Now to the rumor itself, as relayed by website Gamatsu. A survey being circulated to some fans shows screenshots and video of a presumed sixth mainline entry, though it doesn't explicitly call it Armored Core. Instead, it outlines what it calls a third-person shooter mecha action title and does ask for title recommendations, including Armored Core options. Hidetaka Miyazaki is claimed to be creating this world, though what else he could be doing remains to be seen. Gamatsu notes that FromSoft last spoke about the possibility of an Armored Core project in 2016. However, with 6 years having passed, it's clear that the game may have been rebooted at some point. If and when it will come out, of course, remains to be seen. FromSoft is currently busy at work putting the finishing touches on Elden Ring, which launches on PS4 and PS5 in February. And with no other announced games, it's obviously working on something else. The big question here, however, is who will act as publishing partner, if any. From itself owns Armored Core, and it has dealt with a number of different partners over the years, including Sony itself, SEGA, and most recently Bandai Namco, which of course it worked closely with on Dark Souls. Dustin, what do you think? I'm kind of curious. Are you in Armored Core at all? This was a franchise that was pretty big when I was young. I wasn't a fan of these games. I really struggled in early 3D. I just wasn't into it. But looking back, they were quite revolutionary, especially the second game, I think, was very well loved on PS2. So do you have any input on this? Is this something you'd like to see them do? It would be fun to see From do something else again.
Yeah, I'm a little mixed on this. I've never played an Armored Core game, so I really don't know very much about them, but it is from the old From Software era, the pre-Miyazaki era, which was just completely different. Mm-hmm. The one guy really changed the entire course of the output of that studio. So on one hand, Miyazaki is one of those developers that no matter what he does, I'm going to check out and be at least mildly excited just because everything that he's touched has been awesome, in my opinion. So in that sense, cool. And the other thing is just so different from Bloodborne, Dark Souls, Sekiro. These are all third-person action-focused combat games. And so moving over to a more sci-fi focused mech experience is intriguing nonetheless. The other hand, though, I guess the disappointing aspect, and I use that word very lightly, is that Miyazaki has shown to be very creative in doing new ideas. Specifically, I think with Sekiro was one of the biggest ones in how it deviated in a lot of ways from his formula, the From Software formula, even though it has a lot of the hallmarks as well. So to see them go back to something old is a little disappointing just because I know what they're capable of with a total left field of something as crazy as Bloodborne. So, but this might be a total reinvention. They won't even necessarily call it Armored Core from what it sounds like. So the possibilities are endless.
What do you think, Chris, of From Software exploring this old franchise of theirs? Beloved franchise. It's actually, when you bring up FromSoft, it's actually a franchise that some people think of first. And it's surprising because of how much Souls has taken over. But it was at one time Kingsfield and all these random things that they don't do anymore.
Yeah. No, I think these were games that I kind of missed. I think I played a little bit of it on PS2, but I never got into it. I think the style of gameplay, specifically for early PlayStation, I think early 3D, to Colin's point, was a little bit rough, and there were some games that did it a lot better than others. I think Armored Core is one of those where I couldn't grasp it really. It just didn't feel right to me. But at the same time, the idea of modern From Software going back to something like this and maybe mining it for inspiration and fitting it into not necessarily their formula, but kind of taking this idea and this IP and this world and kind of saying, like, what do we do well that we can bring to this? That is really cool to me and really exciting, because From Software haven't done anything sci-fi related in a long time, ever since Miyazaki, really. So the idea of him doing something sci-fi, even if it's just kind of Armored Core adjacent, even if it's something that from a gameplay perspective is a lot more similar to something like Sekiro, just the idea of that taking place in a sci-fi world with that entire genre at your disposal for creativity and movement and items and attacks and lore and just all that stuff, that is really cool to me. That's exciting as hell. I would love a modern From Software sci-fi game. That sounds awesome. And it would be really, really interesting because, again, this is a studio that doesn't really do it like anyone else. There's a reason why people are stoked about Elden Ring, even though, it's not necessarily that huge of a departure visually or gameplay-wise.
Even though it looks incredibly boring.
I mean, it looks like...
Stand down.
Stand down.
It looks like what it's supposed... I think it looks awesome.
I know. I'm only saying that to bother. I'm specifically just trying to bother Dustin.
But I don't know, just seeing that visual variety from them would be really, really cool. And I can imagine several different, just that surrealist enemy design in a sci-fi setting would be so cool to see. Like, I think they have the design chops to make sci-fi really unique.
I agree.
Which is saying something, because sci-fi is, it's kind of everywhere now. It's like the main type of fantasy that we see in even film and TV now. So I'd be interested in it. I would hope it doesn't play like the old Armored Core, though. That's one thing.
Yeah, we'll see that sticky third person action game from that era. I'll be curious to see how lore heavy it is, and if they embrace the just sheer difficulty of Souls and embed that into Armored Core, because I actually don't know Armored Core's heritage of being very difficult, but it certainly didn't have the reputation that the Souls games do. That's for sure. So I'll be excited about that as well. And I think you're right. It'll be cool to see them do a little something different thematically. I'm very curious to see who their publishing partner might be. They don't really need a publishing partner, but they're very happy working as we see with Bandai Namco. I'm a little, if anyone were to buy from, it would be Bandai Namco, I think. And so we'll keep an eye on who their partner might be as well. But yeah, man, Elden Ring's pretty soon. So I know you're excited about that. I'll still say that the mech game that I want to be revived more than any is the one-time wonderful Squaresoft role-playing game series, Front Mission, which is so good. They released the first one finally about 15 years ago. It was on DS, I think. They finally released the first one, but you should look that. You might like that, Dustin. Actually, it's you're a mech pilot, and it's a turn-based strategy game, kind of like Final Fantasy Tactics in mechs. But you have both a pilot, and then each pilot has their own mechs, and each mech has like their own parts and leveling and all of that. So it's very sophisticated. I think they made up to 3 and 4 in the traditional style. Then they made a game called Front Mission Evolve, which was just not what anyone wanted, in the series went away. So that would be nice to see that revived under Square Enix. Number 5. If it seems like we're talking about French studio Quantic Dream a lot lately, it's because we are. You'll recall that in December of 2021, the studio revealed its rumored Star Wars project called Eclipse. The rumors are that the game is potentially 3 to 5 years away still. But there's more. A well-connected source either within or around Quantic Dream, which leaked Eclipse before it was announced, notes that a second game is in development at Quantic, and interestingly, it revives a PlayStation-centric could-be IP that many have forgotten about. Think back to E3 of 2013. And you'll recall that Quantic Dream showed off a demo called the Dark Sorcerer. This isn't an uncommon thing for the team to do, as it likes to flex its lifelike tech, and did the same exact thing with the so-called Kara demo, which later turned into Detroit Become Human. The idea being pursued based on this demo is something Quantic Dream has never done before. It's apparently a comedy, just like the original Dark Sorcerer 12-minute PS4 demo. Video Games Chronicle relays word from sources that note Quantic Dream's hiring problems plague both of its games and both of its studios, remembering, of course, that Quantic opened a Canadian team, and it's there that Eclipse is primarily being worked on. This new game is in Paris. Quantic Dream, of course, most famous for its trilogy of PS3 and PS4 games exclusive to PlayStation, was founded in the late 90s, and its first game, The Nomad Soul, came out in 1999. It later released Fahrenheit, also known as Indigo Prophecy, depending on where you are in the world, in 2005. But it was 2010's one-time PlayStation 3 exclusive Heavy Rain that put the team on the map. It was followed by Beyond Two Souls in 2013, and the aforementioned Detroit Become Human in 2018. Chris, let's go to you first on this one. Quantic Dream comedy, what do you think? I mean, the Dark Sorcerer was at one time like a pretty famous thing that I had forgotten about. People had circulated this demo. It was beautiful. It was to show off the PlayStation 4's tech and what Quantic Dream was going to do on it. And they're going to maybe do something with it. I'm curious to see if they can pull it off. But David Cage writing a comedy is hard for me to believe. So what are you feeling about this?
He's been writing comedies this whole time. Whoa!
I set you up. Meatball
I mean, there are parts of Heavy Rain that could be made hilarious. The thing that's confusing to me is just comedy is so reliant on timing, and in a video game, especially in a Quantic Dream video game where the player is kind of in charge of dialogue and kind of when things happen, that's going to be a lot harder to get across. I feel like there's potential for that to fall way, way flat. Like I don't see comedy in video games works in very, very specific situations, specifically like in cutscenes or like dialogue that's like completely not up to the player. But I don't see this working in that sense. I'm excited to see whatever the hell they're going to do if they're actually doing something beyond just Star Wars Eclipse. But the comedy angle isn't really getting me excited. Also, I'd like to point out that the Nomad Soul, that game, what was it, the 1999 game?
Omicron?
It's Omicron the Nomad Soul, but now it's just Nomad Soul.
Yeah, I think it's because it's the same thing that happened with, for some reason, Quantic Dream kept having problems with trademark names. Because depending on where you are, Fahrenheit is called Indigo Prophecy, right? So it I don't know why they kept selecting names that just were getting challenged, I guess. But Omicron, people might remember David Bowie, as I recall, is in that game.
Yeah, David Bowie's in it. Weird.
Yeah, David Bowie was ahead of the curve on seeing the potential of a lot of these things.
Oh yeah, for sure. David Bowie understood the internet in like the.
Oh yeah, remember that video? That video was like so eerie.
Yeah.
Crazy, that guy.
Oh my god, I love him so much. R.I.P. Dustin, what do you make of Quantic Dream's potential second project?
It's funny when you mention this. The Dark Sorcerer. I thought somewhere in the back of my brain that exists, and I found it on YouTube, and I thought, man, I completely forgot about this demo thing, but I remember watching it, and it's a specific type of comedy because there's a bunch of jokes, like fourth wall breaking, which I feel like is, I don't know, is that particularly difficult to get right? I feel like I've seen stuff like that just completely fall flat. So to take that type of angle for their first game that's in this direction might be a difficult hurdle, but it's a unique one nonetheless. And for that, it's exciting. Both their Star Wars project and this Dark Sorcerer game, particularly the Star Wars, I'm excited just in that trailer we saw there wasn't the moment where it's like, oh, look, it's R2-D2. I guess it did have Yoda in it, but it was enough other stuff that it's like, okay, we're not just going to be, going down memory lane again in a Star Wars game. So doing a new type of fantasy comedy game is cool.
Yeah. I mean, we don't know that was Yoda either. We
It was Yaddle.
That's true.
We didn't see his license or anything.
Show me your license.
Show me your license, Yoda.
Pull over Yoda in his land speeder. Yeah, I'm not a Quantic hater. I feel like the Quantic Dream hate is a little much. I feel like the lady doth protest too much when it comes to Quantic Dream. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like it's getting a little much. It's getting a little conspicuous. And I doubt that they're having as hard a time hiring as people are making it out to seem. Quantic Dream has what, 3? I won't even say Beyond Two Souls. They have 2 pretty beloved AAA games under their belt, especially with Heavy Rain, which is widely considered an iconic PlayStation game. So
yeah,
we'll see. I'm wishing them well. I know that's rare in this industry where no one seems to like anyone. All right, number 6. In news that doesn't particularly affect the PlayStation ecosystem, but mightily affects one of its closest partners, Take-Two Interactive has acquired and absorbed mobile and social gaming behemoth Zynga for a staggering total cost of $12.7 billion. This is a 64% premium on Zynga's final share price, which is nuts, and will come in 1/3 cash and 2/3 Take-Two stock at a steep discount. This gives Take-Two massive market share with a shocking $6.1 billion in bookings over the last 12 months of business. However, the market isn't taking to the deal. Take-Two stock fell nearly 10% upon announcement, but is clearly and currently readjusting. Zynga, founded in 2007, has been a yo-yo of a company, exploding in growth following the Facebook game craze and suffering substantial layoffs and down years, and now back on the rise again with 134 million monthly active users across their products. Likewise, they've quietly been creating a stock of first-party teams that work in the social and casual spaces to buttress their business model of free-to-play and freemium products, which Take-Two seeks to exploit. Take-Two, which is roughly 3 times bigger corporately and substantially more influential and important in the industry, adds Zynga to its verticals, which include 2K, Private Division, Rockstar, and others, with, of course, a suite of developers and IP underneath each. Worth noting is that there's good news for we core gamers buried within the so-called guidance surrounding this deal, however. Website Axios relays word that a well-connected analyst looking at Take-Two's revenue projections said in part, quote, "There are only a handful of titles that can provide management with the confidence to put out such strong guidance. We believe there is at least one Rockstar IP set to be released by fiscal 2024, end quote. Dustin, let's go to you first. Now, this deal has nothing to do with us, but I will note that it does ultimately have something to do with us because it's going to take these core games. Nothing is going to be safe. And it shows that Take-Two is very aggressive. Remember, they wanted Codemasters too, and the only reason they didn't get them was because they were outbid. So they're going out and trying to purchase things. They created Private Division from the bottom up, and they're publishing games and putting studios under that umbrella as well. But when I see Take-Two and their aggression, I see signals of what's to come. And it's what I said earlier. And remember, I noted that market mergers and acquisitions are already something like 1/6 of the way to where they were last year because of this deal, which is 4 times more or 3.5 times more than Star Wars cost Disney. It is twice as much as Microsoft paid for Bethesda and ZeniMax. This is a big money deal, and it's not in cash, which is important. It's mostly in stock. So that's another interesting point. What do you think?
I was trying to figure out what my favorite Zynga game was. So I went to their website and then was remembering the classic Game of Thrones slots casino.
Oh, yeah.
Just an old classic.
Yeah.
And I'm looking at the website here just to remember, of course, and they have a frequently asked questions section. The top question is, how closely does Game of Thrones Slots Casino follow the story as told in this TV series? And the answer is, the creators of Game of Thrones Slot Casino strive to keep the action in the slots as close to the story as possible. When you decide to play this exciting free slots game, you'll be transported to the 7 Kingdoms and relive the most exciting moments from the show. Once there, you can join a house, take part, blah, blah, blah. Anyway,
what the hell is that?
Yeah, but some of their other games on here, Farmville 3 is the one they have listed on the top. They have some kind of partnership with Harry Potter. They have a game for that, Words with Friends. There's also a Star Wars game. So again, I mentioned this a few times this episode. This is just completely out of our vertical as far as this type of game, the cash grab type, which I don't know, maybe not a cash grab. I guess there's some people that play these games, not just some, but many millions of people that play these games and spend apparently a lot of money doing so. And so I've just have always been surprised at the sheer amount of money and profit generated from these games that we hate here. We simply despise.
Yeah, I despise Zynga. I mean, I have to say that it's not personal, but it's definitely not personal because I've never really played a Zynga game. But I remember very well where they were in San Francisco. They're building, because Sega used to own this iconic building in San Francisco. They moved out of it, and Zynga moved into it, and it was right down the road from IGN. And you would drive by it every day, and it used to have that big Sega logo on it. Now it had the Zynga logo. It just felt very ominous and dark because their games are predatory. And we all saw it firsthand because we all experienced. The thing about Zynga is that it was in everyone's lives if they were on Facebook, no matter what, if they were interfacing with that shit or not. And so I think everyone kind of got a taste, Chris, for what that brand meant. And the only thing that I find astonishing is that they revived it. And you know who the fucking common person is between the worst point of Xbox's timeline and the worst point of Zynga's timeline is Don Matrick. It's amazing. Don Matrick was the CEO of Xbox during its worst moment, then went to Zynga and almost fucking killed it, and then left. And now it's this company again. There's something wrong with that dude. Like, clearly.
Yeah, it's I wonder what his third one is gonna. I wonder what's gonna be the Don Matrick hat.
He used to fly in, by the way. He used to fly to San Francisco and back to Seattle like several times a week when he was at Zynga. Like, he didn't even live in San Francisco, which is nuts. It's not a huge flight, but so yeah. What do you make of this, Chris? I mean, are you? I guess what I want to ask you most is this just kind of, you got to read the financial news because it's so interesting. This person saying like, we are confident based on the numbers, the guidance they're showing, that we have maybe a Rockstar game in here soon, and that's kind of the leak out of this. So what do you think of this?
I mean, as long as it doesn't bleed into our ecosystem, they can do whatever the hell they want on a mobile phone. To me, it's a stay in your lane situation for
maybe
me.
It'll even satiate their want to do stuff in our space and be like,
exactly, where it's like, hey, listen, you go milk these people over on iPhone or whatever. But when you put out a Grand Theft Auto here, maybe just take all that desire you have to just wring the money out of people like a wet towel and just bring it over to that area where people are like more okay with that. Because that's kind of just the social contract that you sign when you play a game like Farmville or like any of these mobile kind of predatory games. Like, yeah, I'm gonna pay, and I'm gonna maybe pretend like my life isn't falling apart for a little bit while I go take a shit in the bathroom at work, and I'll go tend to my crops in Farmville 3D or whatever the hell it is they're making. Zynga was this big, just this menace on Facebook. I would get these constant notifications like, so and so wants you to play Farmville. Do you want to play Farmville? I'm like, first of all, who are you? Why am I friends with somebody who would do this to me? Like, it really taught me who I really cared about was the people who would send me Farmville requests or any of that shit. Immediately gone. Like, immediately, like, you are no friend.
Yeah, and there was like no way to really like at first block it en masse until
you couldn't.
Like, yeah, it was very sadistic and fucked, wasn't it?
I think by the time you could block it, I was already well off of Facebook.
I hate Facebook.
Like, I was like, yeah, I don't need this. I don't need this anymore. But it's, I don't know. This stuff is always disappointing. Anytime we have to talk about mobile games at all, it's kind of like my eyes just kind of glaze over and I get sad. But as long as this stays in its lane, and in fairness, it's not Zynga acquiring Take-Two, which would be, that's not possible. Obviously, they're not nearly as successful as Take-Two, but I'm just thankful that hypothetical reality is not the one that we're in, because that would be an infinitely worse state to be in. So I'm fine with this. Whatever.
Here's how
do your own thing.
Here's how you know mobile games are bad. When all these years later, when you make fun, when you say like, "Oh, I don't play mobile games," people still be like, "Did you play Monument Valley?" It's like, hey, listen, I'm talking to you out there. Stop. Jesus Christ. All right.
Sword and Sorcery.
Or what was that chair game that was big? Chair. The Utah studio. They made that huge RPG. Why can't I remember? It was massive. Let me see.
I can't even imagine a mobile.
Oh no,
RPG.
it's huge. Yeah, Infinity Blade.
Infinity Blade. That's it.
Those games were massive.
Right.
That's why that Infinity Blade is what killed Shadow Complex. That's why they never did a sequel. They were like, why the fuck would we do a sequel to this? We're making Infinity Blade.
I forgot about that. Wow. That is crazy. That is a crazy memory.
Yeah, I don't know why I remember that. I can't remember anything, but I remember that. I don't remember anything useful.
Yeah.
I knew that a game existed. I really like that. Donald Mustard is the guy that founded that studio. Super nice guy. All right. These next two are connected, so let's get through them. Number 7, as it does each month, Sony has revealed the best-selling games on the PlayStation Store, this time for the month of December 2021, and the results may surprise you, or at least some of them. The best-selling game on both PlayStation 4 and PlayStation 5 was Among Us, the seemingly extremely late port of the 2018 social game with many millions of players around the world. On PS5, the list goes on. Miles Morales, Call of Duty Vanguard, Five Nights at Freddy's Security Breach, and NBA 2K22 round out the top 5. Other interesting games include Battlefield 2042 at 7, Kena, I can't remember how to say it. Kena, Bridge of Spirits at 9. Kenneth, Bridge of Spirits at 9. It Takes Two at 10, Far Cry 6 at 12, Guardians of the Galaxy, Ghost of Tsushima, and Deathloop in spots 13 through 15, Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart at 17, and Back 4 Blood at 20. On PS4, numbers 2 through 5 are Call of Duty Vanguard, Grand Theft Auto 5, Madden NFL 22, and Miles Morales. Spider-Man slotted in at 6, Security Breach at 8, The Witcher 3 at 11, Battlefield 24 at 13, The Hunter Call of the Wild, interestingly, at 16, which is one of those games I really want to play, actually. Ark Survival Evolved at 17, and God of War at 20. The same old games were at the top of the PSVR list, while Fortnite retook the free-to-play charts across PS4 and PS5, once shaken up by the likes of eFootball, Warzone, Genshin Impact, and others, which are all still hanging around too. Now, the more important data is in number 8, because now we have the more interesting than this, the December numbers. More interesting than the December numbers, I should say, are numbers from the entire year, which PlayStation has likewise provided us. The top 20 best-selling games on PlayStation Store for the whole calendar year of 2021 for PS5 in order were NBA 2K22. Yes, that's right. NBA 2K22, best-selling game on PS5. Okay. Call of Duty Vanguard, Miles Morales, Madden NFL 22, Battlefield 2042, Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart, Call of Duty Black Ops Cold War, MLB The Show 21, Resident Evil Village, Far Cry 6, Assassin's Creed Valhalla, FIFA 22, Among Us, Mortal Kombat 11. Among Us was on sale for like 3 weeks. Mortal Kombat 11, NBA 2K21, It Takes Two, FIFA 21, Deathloop, Returnal, and Kenneth, Bridge of Spirits. On PlayStation 4, the top 20 best-selling games of 2021 were, in order, Grand Theft Auto 5, Call of Duty Black Ops Cold War, Minecraft, NBA 2K22, Call of Duty Vanguard, Madden NFL 22, NBA 2K21, Mortal Kombat 11, Call of Duty Modern Warfare, Miles Morales, FIFA 22, The Forest, Need for Speed Heat, UFC 4, Ark Survival Evolved, Gang Beasts, Rust, and Naruto to Boruto, Shinobi Striker. The top 10 best-selling PSVR games for 2021 were in order: Beat Saber, Job Simulator, Super Hot, Gorn, Swordsman VR, Creed Rise to Glory, Vader Immortal, The Walking Dead Sinners and Saints, Rick and Morty Virtual Reality, and The Walking Dead Onslaught. And the top 10 most popular free-to-play games in 2021 across PS4 and PS5 were in order: Fortnite, Call of Duty Warzone, Rocket League, Splitgate, Apex Legends, Genshin Impact, Destiny 2, Rec Room, Brawlhalla, and Rogue Company. All right, boys. The Fury 4815 wrote into us on Patreon and said, "Hey, CDC, with the most downloaded PSN games of 2021 list released and Call of Duty not being number one for both PS4 and PS5, could this be the start of people actually getting sick of the franchise and starting the downfall of COD? Or do you think it's just a bump in the road and we'll be number one this year?" Chris, what's your theory on this? I actually have a theory on this, that Call of Duty players buy their games physically. And I just can't imagine that NBA really outsold it. But the thing is that this theory kind of doesn't make sense, because I would feel the same way about NBA players. I just don't, like people that go into GameStop, people that buy their games at Walmart, there's nothing wrong with that. But I think that these more casual games are sold at a higher clip physically.
Yeah, you know what I think it is? I think you're not wrong that people who buy Call of Duty and NBA and stuff like that probably do buy it physically. I think the difference here is I think most fans of those games are buying things digitally, while I think you're looking at the physical media part as Call of Duty is a game that you buy for your kid. you know, because it's the game that they ask for Christmas, or NBA is like the game that you
or
get
a girlfriend
because it's
buys her boyfriend
game.
or something, right? Like,
yeah, it's like a really safe thing that it's like a gift game, and it's not so easy for your average person to gift a digital game. That people haven't really wrapped their heads around that yet. So I would imagine that you're not wrong that a lot of physical copies of games sold are probably Call of Duty and NBA, but I do think still the majority of the fan base, especially as digital becomes more and more the norm, are getting used to buying their stuff digitally. I do think it's interesting that Call of Duty is not number one, but at the same time, the fact that it's number two, it's not. Don't get your hopes
also,
up.
it appears multiple times in both lists, which is another thing you shouldn't get your hopes up about. So, yeah, I agree. I mean, that's good insight, and it's fascinating. And Dustin, I'm curious to Grand Theft Auto 5, best-selling game on PS4. Again, now, not a $60 game, digital, of course. This is, I think, counting cumulative downloads, MPD counts, something like cumulative sales dollars, which is what makes games like Miles Morales, and we'll talk about that in a minute, it's so impressive how well it's doing. But what do you make of these charts? Anything surprising to you here? I think maybe the biggest surprise to me is just Among Us, again, being in the top 20 on PS5 after being out for 3 weeks. I don't know if that just shows a dearth of PlayStation 5 games, which I think is true, because you see games on the PS5 list that don't appear at all on the PS4 list. But the PS4 is turning into more of a legacy sales platform, wherein I don't think the list is even going to look very different next year. It's going to probably look exactly the same, actually. So what do you make of these numbers?
The one advantage that Among Us has is that it is only $5, I think, to purchase. But even then, at $5 to skyrocket to the top lists, I had the feeling that Among Us was winding down at this point.
Same.
But apparently not. Seeing this hasn't been out very long and just doing insane numbers.
What are they selling though? Like I thought it was free.
I don't know.
So
like I played it for free.
I'll look it up on
It's free on mobile, but any console or PC version costs $5, and I think you get some hats or something.
Yeah, it just says $5. That's what it is, and then you can actually buy currency too.
Yeah.
12/14 it came out, so yeah, it was only on the charts for 2 weeks and change.
Crazy. As far as the question about Call of Duty, the only insight that I would say about this is that I think you're right about the physical versus digital stuff, but this Call of Duty in particular had some bad press behind it from the beta not being very good. Obviously, that didn't have a huge impact, but as far as is this the beginning of the end or a bump in the road, I think it's a bump in the road. When they have a game with the words Modern Warfare in the title next year, yeah, it'll be back at number one.
It's over. Yeah.
Well said. And with gusto as well. We do have an extra question here from Brandon O, who says, greetings CDC. And I'm sorry again that we're not talking to you too much this episode. You'll see why in a little while, especially when we usually fold in some of your great questions. But of course, you can keep submitting them and we'll use them next week. PlayStation published its list of top downloads for PSN games in 2021 with most unsurprising results. However, one that sticks out to me the most is Spider-Man Miles Morales at number 2 on the list for PS5 games. This lends support for Sony's plans to release more condensed gaming experiences. My question is, what do you expect next from the PlayStation library to be adapted in a similar way? This is a great question. Miles Morales has been a huge hit. I'm wondering if people go into it knowing how small it is compared to the original Spider-Man. I think that they're supposed to be telegraphed that by the price cut. But I wonder if people are getting what they want. Like, I thought Miles Morales was awesome. I would have maybe wanted a little more. We're going to get Spider-Man 2, and we're going to get much more. But yeah, this does signal, this is a good sign. I'll just argue that again, though, it's not the first. Like, Ratchet and Clank was really the first to get that treatment in 2016. That also did really, really well. So, Chris, is there anything you would want to see get a similar kind of budgetary AAA treatment? Something that exists, but is a spinoff that is smaller? Obviously, Iki Island is something like that, but not quite.
Yeah, I was going to my mind goes immediately to Ghost of Tsushima, but then I remember that, and then my mind kind of gets confused because it's DLC, so it's not really something new. I think anything open world has potential to kind of have these more interstitial releases. I think it's why you see things like what was it, Infamous Festival? Was it Festival of Blood?
Yeah, Festival of Blood. That's right.
I think it's why you see that. It's why you see stuff like Miles Morales, or I think you could even probably make somewhat of a case for Iki Island. But you don't see similar things for God of War or The Last of Us, because these are more linear, curated experiences that require a little bit more design work from level artists, and or it's more of a team thing. Whereas if you have the foundation of the map built out for you already, then that's all just programming and voice actors and just people placing AI in different places. It's a lot easier to iterate in that way. But I don't know. I feel like I'm still of the mind where I would just prefer a full-on sequel. I'm not really a DLC. I still have not touched Iki Island because it's DLC, and I loved Ghost of Tsushima. I probably loved it most out of anybody here, and I still, I just feel like I got what I wanted out of it. It's a big game to install again. I don't know if I want to do that for a DLC. I'll wait till the sequel comes out, where I know there's going to be a lot more new stuff to sink my teeth into, and maybe eventually I'll get to Iki Island if I feel compelled to. But I'm still old school in the sense that I just prefer my proper sequels. Not really a DLC person.
Yeah, I hear you there. But my answer, Dustin, to this, and thinking about it a little more, is maybe factions will be this game, right? Like some sort of standalone spin-off that takes place in the world and is recognizable. But I don't know if that's really what he's looking for with that answer.
Right. Yeah. Well, my first thought was doing a DLC in this, was it Left Behind, right? For the first Last of Us?
Mm-hmm.
Doing something along those lines. We've always talked about, specifically you, Colin, have always championed that there's so many different areas that you can explore the Last of Us world outside of Joel and Ellie as your main characters.
Yeah, as in the first 20 years before you meet Joel, and then like everything that happens between the two times you see him.
Yeah. I would like to see, just throwing this out there, Returnal was a game that I have a lot of strong and negative feelings about. It's probably my most mixed game this year. I would love to see them do a Returnal, either a DLC or a standalone thing, and make it linear. Drop the roguelike thing and go all in on, I don't know whether it's upgradable weapons or whatever, something that maybe could be a little bit more less rage-inducing every time you play it, because the combat in that game is so good, so fantastic. I almost just want to see that applied to something else.
Fair enough. I don't know. I'm interested to see. This is a great question. I'm interested to see how Sony explores this. Miles Morales is definitely great telemetry for them. They're probably like, yeah, this is great. This is great data. And I think I'll be eager to see more of those interstitials. I just like you said, I don't want, and I think Chris made this point, I don't want it to get in the way of the big guns. If you can do both, then that's totally fine with me, but let's not fuck around with the real adventures that we want.
Yeah.
All right, number 9 is a wrap up. The official PlayStation blog reports Choose Your Own Adventures side scroller Infernax comes to PS4 and PS5 on February 14th. This game looks fucking awesome. I just want to point that out. It looks actually...
I saw this,
looks
actually,
awesome.
The trailer.
Yeah, looks
awesome.
awesome.
The trailer had a nice little joke at the end with the Valentine's Day thing.
Yep.
Yeah, this game looks awesome.
Yeah, it does. I'm really, really excited about that.
Infernax.
Yeah. It's definitely right up my alley. People will see it and understand. Website Push Square reports cooking game Cannibal Cuisine comes to PS4 and PS5 on January 25th. Exploration game Far Changing Tides comes to PS4 and PS5 on March 1st. Horror game In Nightmare comes to PS4 and PS5 on March 29th. Action RPG Shattered Tale of the Forgotten King comes to PS4 and PS5 at some point in the first quarter of this year. An over-the-top action game, Showa American Story, comes to PS4 and PS5 at an undetermined point in the future. I want to make a note real quick. The Showa American Story, another game that looks dope. People should go look into this game as well. It looks really, really cool. Website Gamatsu reports rhythm game Beat Souls comes to PS4 and PS5 this February, and survival game Forever Skies comes to PlayStation 5 at some point in 2022. And finally, developer GSC Game World has revealed its upcoming shooter, Stalker 2, has been delayed until December 8th of 2022. This is relevant to us on the show only because Stalker 2's Xbox exclusivity window is a mere 3 months, meaning it will now not come to PlayStation 5 until sometime in 2023. I think that game looks awesome. Any thoughts, Chris, on this, by the way, this extensive Stalker delay? I'm like, what? The game was like, did they need all that time to take out the NFT and NPCs that they were putting in?
Yeah, I don't know. I think it could mean a variety of things. I feel like I have such a little knowledge or insight into Stalker as an IP that I wouldn't even know where to begin as far as like speculation. But it could be that they've run into some massive problem. It could be that, hey, we might have to delay, and we might actually have to delay multiple times because that's how things seem to go now. We might as well just have a big delay. I don't know. I don't have any thoughts about this one because I'm not necessarily super stoked on it. I think it looks beautiful from what we saw. Like visually, it looks really awesome, and I am into Metro and things like that, but it's so far away now that I'm kind of like, all right, cool. I don't have to really worry about it. So
I love me the European. I love me the Eastern European post-apocalyptic stuff. I just think it's so good. Like it's so tantalizing, you know?
Yeah, there's something. It's weird. It's weird how atmospheric those games are when so many horror games kind of fail at even just evoking remotely. I'll talk about it when I get to my awards, but
well,
should we do it?
Oh,
did I spoil
it? No, let's do it. Let's just get into the awards. Let's not spoil it at all. Let's get into the awards.
Let's do it.
Now, at this point in the show, as our audience knows, we usually go to 6 questions, comments, concerns, thoughts, and ideas from the audience submitted on Patreon, patreon.com/laststandmedia, one of your many perks by joining us over there. Thank you so much for joining us. We could not do it without you, and we really appreciate you. However, we're going to eschew that today and instead do Game of the Year. And each of us have selected 3 games, our third, second, and first selections. And in addition, Sacred Symbols tradition is that we make up awards and give them away, some good, some bad, to random games, also to companies and others that we think are appropriate. So what I want to do, guys, is I want to start with each of our third games and each of our second games and each of our first games, and then we'll give away each of our awards. And Dustin, you're the newcomer here. You've never done Game of the Year with us, I don't think.
No.
So this is your first time. So what is your... And by the way, out of our 8 or 9 selections, there are 8 games. So 8 games represented. And out of our 15 awards that we're giving away, I think it's 15 different entities or products. So we're hitting on a bunch of different things, which is nice. Dustin, so what is your number 3 game?
My number 3 game is It Takes Two. And I mentioned earlier that I just finished this up. And part of that was I was very confident that this was part of my list. But I realized, I was like, oh, it would be wrong of me to put it on the list and not have finished it, and to me. So I went and took care of that, and it didn't change my feelings really at all. It just confirmed them that the reason why I think the reason why I feel strongly about this game is that it's just filled to the brim with unique ideas and applies them in this co-op formula in ways that I simply have never seen before. And I think that's something that it's at least important for me when talking about the games we want to celebrate at the end of the year, is that It Takes Two has some issues, some things I don't like about it. Some of the dialogue with the main characters, it can get a little cringe for me at times, or a bit annoying. But despite that, I think there is so much to celebrate with this title. The way that let me restart. When it comes to co-op games, I often think of frustration or doing things that I've already done before in other co-op, puzzle, whatever games. And this game is just perfectly paced with new ideas. As soon as one idea is starting to get a little stale, it brings you something else. And the very last comment I'll make about this is just that I have so much respect for the fact that this is not a casual game. This isn't a game to pick up if you play a lot of games and your significant other doesn't play them at all. You're not going to have a good time. This game should be played by 2 people that are at least familiar and have experience playing games. And I played through it with Holly, my wife Holly, and we had just a really, really great time. And there were a few times where, you're going to get frustrated with somebody when you're playing a co-op game, but it felt different. I don't know. And so this game won the Game Awards Game of the Year. And while I wouldn't put it quite that high, there's just a lot to love about this title.
Right on. Chris, what is your number 3 selection?
So my number 3 is Guardians of the Galaxy. I just went into this game not excited at all, kind of ready to shit all over it. Because I was expecting another Avengers Crystal Dynamics style cash grab. And what I got instead was probably one of the best written games I think I've played in a really long time. Like, just a really competently written story with characters that I never got sick of, despite the irreverence and the ceaselessness of character interactions. And I don't know how they made a game where nobody shuts up and it's not detrimental. And it works, and it's got emotional beats that actually hit, and those beats are different for everybody that I've spoken to. Like, people, we did a spoiler cast on it, and each of us had a different point where we felt like the game was actually hitting on something that hit close to home, or something that we related to in some way. And it's just a really masterful adaptation of something that very easily could have fit into this weird uncanny valley of, that's not Chris Pratt, that's not Zoe Saldana as these famous beloved characters. And in some ways, and in most ways, I feel like it outshines the film. Obviously, because it has the time to breathe with these characters in ways that a movie can't, but also, just I would prefer to see these characters again. I would not mind a sequel to this game. In fact, I would welcome it, because I think while the story is fantastic and the worlds are really fun, and I think the combat is competent enough and increases in dynamicness and opens up in a lot of ways later on, I think there's ways to improve upon that to the point where you have something really, really incredible. I should note that this was originally my number 4, but I had Hitman 3 on my list originally, and I didn't want to put that on for other reasons. But Guardians of the Galaxy is just really stellar. It's a shockingly good game. I genuinely would recommend it. I know Colin kind of put it down because the combat wasn't up to his. He didn't like
my
it.
exacting standard.
My exacting standard. I think it's fair, because the combat was the only part that I felt middling on, but the writing and just the care really kind of pulled me through that, and the combat does open up and get more interesting, and you find more interesting ways to combine different attacks, and as your understanding of the game broadens, you find more ways to experiment with it, and you find more ways to kind of enjoy what's given to you, even if it's not, game of the year as far as combat goes. This is a really valiant effort by the studio, and just really surprising. I would not have expected this game to be anywhere near my game of the year list, and here it is.
Enough.
So
fair enough. IDOS Montreal, well done. Yeah, I gotta say again, I found it quite charming. I was just like, okay, I don't need to play this personally. So no disrespect to it, although I assume that sounds inherently disrespectful. All right, let's start my beginning of my list. That's going to infuriate people. Now, I didn't put you guys on the spot to do this, so I'm just going to note this now, because I went out and counted before we recorded. I beat 27 games this year. I beat 10 on PS5, 9 on PS4, 7 on Vita, and 3 on PS3. Additionally, I played and beat 2 games that I had already played and beaten: Shovel Knight and God of War, the original. I also played 4 additional games: Deathloop, Dodgeball Academia, Tales of Arise, and Puyo Puyo Tetris, that I played, a little bit, but didn't have enough of an experience with. And then 2 games, Persona 4 and Rainbow Moon, I played a shit ton of, but never beat in the year. Otherwise, the games I played. I just wanted to point that out. So this is kind of the pool that I'm personally pulling from. And with that said, my number 3 game is Returnal. I was originally struggling. I knew what my top 2 games were going to be. I was originally struggling with what the third one was going to be, and I was looking through my list, and there were some games on here where I was like, yeah, that would make sense, and some of them I'll get to a little later. But I can't avoid that Returnal ended up being this mind fuck of a game that really stuck with me. It really did. I became obsessive over Returnal for a little while. Like I wanted to overcome it. I remember saying on the show, like, I just refuse to let this game beat me. I don't know why I'm so bad at it, but I just refused to stop playing. And I played for like 80 hours and I loved it. I ended up beating it and started going back and cleaning up some trophies, although I found that kind of tedious. So I stopped, but it's just a really special game that utilizes the PlayStation 5 wonderfully to get you right back into the action. It frustrates you and forces you to kind of learn these different systems. I think my only real problem with it is just the lack of permanence of the upgrades in the game that just make you feel like you're not making any progress. But the interesting thing about that is it just forces you to so-called get good. Like you just got to get good at the game. And the way I played the game in the beginning and the way I played the game at the end, and I wish I had video of my first hour and my last hour about probably how crazy efficient and good I am at the game now, or was, as opposed to when I started and I was just struggling. Returnal ended up being this very fascinating saga that I think represents PS5's first year pretty well. And I would argue Returnal is maybe the most essential game on the console that you can only play on it so far. So got to give my love to Housemarque. Totally understand why Sony decided to go into business with them permanently by buying them after the game came out. It is an impressive hallmark of third-person action and arcade marriage that I think I was skeptical that Housemarque could do, and I don't really know why I was skeptical of that. And the other thing I like, too, is that it's just so recognizably a Housemarque game, even in 3D when you play it. The way things come at you, the way things move, the fluidity of it. Returnal is just really special. I got to give it props.
Yeah, Colin, I gotta say, for me with Returnal, it's the game I think back on that I'm relieved I beat, because I know that if I never beat it, it would destroy me inside. And I think you felt the same way, that this was the game. If I think about it now, I'm like, I never can put myself through that ever again. And I've beaten all the like every Souls game, and something about Returnal brought a special level of salt out from me.
Yeah, me too. And I think that might have been by design. Like I feel like it prodded you, because it was like, oh, no loading, no waiting, no go, like, here, you're back. You're dead. I remember saying, I was like, the game would fall apart for you in like 5 or 10 seconds, and you'd be back before you even knew it hit you. And so you're just back as Celine, and you're just like, oh, and there's always one more run, one more run.
There is a level of approachability that quick loading offers difficult games like that. Like I remember feeling that way with Demon Souls when that was out on PS5, like the remake, and feeling, wow, this is so much less crushing than I remember it being, purely because I don't have to wait 14 years to load into the to load back to the checkpoint where I started. Returnal does that beautifully. That's a game that I just put down after a while because I got distracted by it. I am enamored by that game purely because it stands out so much from the PS5 or from the Sony first party, in a sense that it's so gameplay driven and so learnable. It really is this Doom Eternal style game where it's just, you have to get good, and it will not lower its standards to appeal to you. It will not change. You cannot do anything to alleviate your struggle other than get better. And I appreciate that kind of game coming out of first party, because we don't see that really. We see a lot of, story-based stuff and very customizable difficult, which is all awesome, by the way. But it's nice to have this one thing in the family that's just sort of like, nah, you meet us on our turf, or you don't at all.
Right. I would also say, Chris, that I didn't realize this specific aspect of it until I was done with it and was just thinking about it, is that in the one way the game does let you get better is by unlocking more weapons and more weapon options as you use them more and more. But the more you do that, the more the weapon pool becomes diluted, and the less often you get. So like everything has this cutting downside. Like even being very complete means that you're just going to get the weapons you like less. And it's very interesting.
Progress is a double-edged sword in it, and I think that's such an awesome. It's so cool. I'm really looking forward to getting back into it once I finish. I want to finish Prey before I do anything else, because I know that's a game that I'm gonna if I get unimmersed in it, then I'm fucked. So I have to stick with it until it's done. But Returnal is a game that I'm really looking forward to getting back to because it just plays so damn well. It's exactly my kind of game. Like that gameplay, that kinetic, fast shit. I love it.
It was great. So that's my number 3. Dustin, let's throw it over to you for your second selection, your number 2.
Now, I know some people will hear this number 2 and cry that maybe this shouldn't have been an eligible choice. But my response is, fuck you. This is my list. And this was one of the games I enjoyed the most this year. And that would be Chris has crossed it out and wrote in Balan Wonderworld. That's Balan Wonderworld, my number 2.
Oh, damn it.
No, my number 2 is Nier Replicant, which is indeed somewhere between a remaster and a remake of the first Nier game.
I think this is a valid choice. I just want to say that at the top. It's totally valid.
Sure.
Totally valid.
Yeah, I just got to get in front of it right off the bat. I want to say, I don't care about your comment saying, how did Dustin pick a remaster? I don't care.
Right.
So with that said, yeah, I would say this game falls, like I said, it's between remaster and remake. I would lean more towards remake, but the way that I was immersed into this game, and particularly the story, was just something that once I got truly deep into it, I couldn't put it down. And there's so many aspects of this game that to this day I think about the different moments in the story, the music, the characters. And I had always heard about this game being very good in some aspects, but also terrible in its original PS3 version. And as a huge fan of Nier Automata, I knew this was one that I was most likely going to like. And some of you may recall earlier in the year, I had a lot of hesitation because the main developer behind this was Toy Logic, which did not have a lot of background that was anything to write home about as far as their development. So I had a bit of hesitancy, but I think that the final product came out really, really great and is something that I can easily recommend to people that are interested in this game. And a lot of people ask whether or not you should play this game first or Automata first. And I would still say you should play Automata first, just because this game is less accessible than that game. And there's a lot of problems with Nier Replicant as well. There's a lot of replaying content in order to progress the story, which can get annoying. But overall, if you're okay with that, I think that the story and the themes of this game are one that will stay with you and one that you'll continue to think about. And I love this idea of it's like a post apocalypse. Like this is many, many, many years after this idea of the world ending, and the way that he is able to string these games together, maybe insanity to some, and maybe even to me, but I enjoy it. So Nier Replicant, a fantastic game. I'm glad to see it sold very well, and I would love to see just one more Nier game. I don't need there to be a million, but just one more main one would be great.
We'll see. Good selection, number 2. Chris, your second selection is...
Yeah, so my number 2 game of the year is Psychonauts 2. This is another game I was just surprised by. I always had an appreciation for the first Psychonauts, but I didn't really play it until way, way later. I appreciated it more from a visual standpoint. I appreciated the strangeness of it. And how distinct it looked, because that's still something that matters to me greatly is compelling art design, and just it's your first impression of a world, and if you can stick out in that way, then you have a way better chance of hooking people. So I always appreciated Psychonauts as a series, and I was looking forward to Psychonauts 2. I didn't think that it was going to necessarily be the greatest thing ever, but I started it and I was just really impressed by how mature this game was. It's dealing with a lot of really interesting subjects. It's dealing with anxiety and mental health, and not in the ways that you would expect a lot of games to do it. There are other games that touch on similar things, like Hellblade famously like touches on schizophrenia and does that in a very interesting way as well. But the way that I felt this game approached, you know, the connective tissue of ideas and just the struggles that people go through it, and manifested that in this perfect marriage between themes and gameplay and level design, is so next level good. It's so expertly done that I was blown away by it. Just the fact that every enemy is some manifestation of this this mental thing, and every aspect of its design makes sense. Like there are sensors that go around trying to stamp you out because you're not supposed to be there changing shit. There are enemies like doubts and regrets, and the way that you fight them is all linked to your ability set, which is it's like watching metaphors exist, and it's like such a strange thing to see executed so well, and there's so many fun boss encounters and so many fun character interactions, and the writing is so fun and so weird and just bizarre, and it feels, I don't know, it almost feels like this PS2 game that was brought out, and all the best aspects of those early PS2, just the wonder of kind of open 3D spaces and the personality and the character that is you know, expressed in every detail of that level design, but still reined in enough that you feel like you're on this ride almost. Not like you could get lost for hours and you're overwhelmed by choice, but that it kind of tempts you in these different little ways, and there's always something to see because it's scaled back enough that they have the capacity and the manpower to do that, to make every room worth exploring. And it's just a really special game, and it's just so expertly done. A theme here is that combat isn't the most interesting thing. It's almost the least impressive thing about it. But just moving through these worlds and interacting with these characters, and just seeing how these enemies interact with you, and how Raz and the voice cast interacts with them is... I set a squirrel on fire, and Raz just says, "See you in hell." And it's just just this weird juxtaposition of, this is such a weird, mature game, but at the same time, it's got that weird, that slight edge to it that kind of makes it feel like, oh, this isn't exactly a kid's game. And it's just, man, what a good experience Psychonauts 2 is. And I should say the level design of this game is astounding. Like it is some of the best and most creative use of boss encounters and ability sets in tandem with the environment that I think I've seen in any game. And I think just the game design chops here are almost second to none, man. Like it's really impressive work here. And that's it. I loved it. I loved Psychonauts 2.
Double Fine. Good to know you. Be the last Double Fine game we probably get. But
yeah,
glad that it did really well. It seemed to have been very successful, both for Game Pass and on an individual sales level. Hey. Number 2 for me, Far Cry 6. Now, I'm probably around the 100-hour mark in this game at this point. I don't know what the hell is going on with me in this game, but I find it so appealing. And it's not, I was going through my games. That's why I so carefully went through everything I played, because I'm like, is it recency bias? That was the one thing I really wanted to not overlook. And as I was looking through the games, I was like, no, it's not. I played some really great games this year, but Far Cry 6 is just so sublime. It gives me exactly what I'm looking for in a game. It's so fun with how well it plays, and the versatility of the weapons. And I think the story is pretty interesting, and the themes are pretty interesting. I think it's funny because for the first time, I think Far Cry really embraces its politics. And that's why I was a little surprised that it wasn't more popular with the in-crowd and with the media and stuff, because it's not even that it's overtly left-wing, although it is. There's like a transgender character. There's a like a cross-dressing character, like a drag queen character, and all sorts of fucking, shit in it that is not, I don't mean shit in a bad way, but all sorts of random, all sorts of shit in the game.
We know what you mean.
So it's very open in that way, but it's about a dictatorship. It's about a communist dictatorship that's supposed to be Cuba. And what's interesting about it is that they have this thing called Vivaro in it. It's quite fascinating. There's like a fictional company that creates this fictional. They basically utilize this stuff on tobacco leaves to make it into this anti-cancer medicine that they then won't sell to the United States. And they have them basically totally, it's like a reverse embargo on them, which is so clever if you know the history of Cuba and the United States, in which the United States has embargoed Cuba to death. It's fascinating that in this world, they refuse to sell this cancer treatment to the United States. And and I was Mike and I were kidding around about this. I'm like, there is no white people in this game except for one. There's a guy named McKay, who's a Canadian guy who's a villain. Otherwise, it's just all Hispanic people, lots of intermingling between Spanish and English. That's why I always kept saying, it's like, the guy. You know, that's literally, go play Far Cry 6. I challenge you to tell me that they don't say it like that, because they absolutely do. I say it all the time. But it's always with that emphasis. Oh, the guy. You know, like they'll say, it'll be like perfect English or whatever. Go see Juan and check in on the chickens and tell him he needs to help the guy. You know, like stuff like that. So I'm like, all right, I think I get it. It's the way I always said. It's the way Obama used to say Pakistan. It used to drive me nuts, because he'd be like, so we're doing these things in the Middle East, and we're in India, and we're in Pakistan, and I'm like, what are you saying it like that for? You know,
yeah.
It's like the United States in French is États-Unis. We don't say that.
Yeah, you don't have to.
Just chill out.
Say it.
Just chill out. But I liked the game's intermingling of culture. I thought it was really cool. That's why the more I played it, the more I was surprised that this wasn't a darling, because I feel like Far Cry 5 in Montana, I loved. I thought it was super cool. And I really loved the references to like domestic terrorism and to David Koresh and the Branch Davidians and all that kind of stuff. But that went over everyone's head in media and stuff. And so I think that they reestablished something that I felt was much more heavy-handed, but made a lot more sense. And the way that the world deals with the story is also cool. Like I said earlier, even the idea that the game persists forever as you're under an insurgency from who you left behind with the bad guys is a really neat idea. And what I like too about it is that it's not just a typical Ubisoft game, which serves a purpose, wherein like, here's a huge map and here's everything you can do, and we have some roadblocks to stop you, but you can really do anything you want. Very, very Bethesda-like as well. This game, it was more deliberate. Like, to find an enemy checkpoint, you would need to like go and find a letter that indicated that checkpoint was vulnerable to attack. Otherwise, you just visited and you couldn't do anything there. You could fight, but then you'd have to run away. Stuff like that. Like, the game felt like it was just drawing more out of you. And I just think Far Cry 6 is expertly done. I'm shocked, because I feel the game's selling very well. People are obviously playing it and enjoying it, but I was really shocked by how I thought this game was quite reactive to what everyone was saying about Far Cry New Dawn, Far Cry 5, certainly Far Cry 4. And it seemed like it just went ignored. And if I worked on the game, I'd be kind of frustrated, because I was like, we made something really awesome here. It's way deeper than anything we've ever made. It's way, way, way meatier with its story. I love the characters. And the entire idea basically is that there was a revolution on this island in the 60s that the people basically lost. And this dictator, and it's like a familial dynastic dictatorship where it's a father and a son. And what ends up happening is that there's like there's all these different groups that want to fight together to take on the government, but you have to get them to work together and learn to deal with each other. They don't really like each other. That's what the whole game's about. So there's like this old group of old men and women, like literally old men and women in the mountains, called the Heroes of 67 or something. And they're like the remnants of the old rebellion. And you have to like get them on board, and you have to get on board like these really socialistic, like crazy militant people, and the entertainment sphere and all. It's really neat. Play Far Cry 6. I'm telling you guys, it's awesome. I really, really like it. So that's my second favorite game of the year, my number 2 from Ubisoft. All right, Dustin, let's hit you up for number 1. No one could argue you have recency bias with this choice.
No. And so I want to preface this by saying, some of you may remember that in 2004, Lord of the Rings Return of the King won Best Picture. And I always felt like this was a symbolic win of the entire trilogy. And I feel like that's somewhat how I want to present this next game, even though I think this game on its own would be my number 1. But I want to present it that way. And that would be Hitman 3 is my game of the year choice. And I feel like this is the game that a lot of people forgot about this year, especially when it comes around to Game of the Year discussions. This, I think, especially paired with its previous 2 games as a trilogy, goes down as one of the best titles for, I guess the PS4 generation. It's kind of a crossover into PS5 now as well. There's just so much here that that you can get into. So just some brief background is that when this new Hitman launched, it was episodic, and people hated that for it. They wanted the entire game at once. But I think IO Interactive was onto something, because these Hitman games weren't meant to be played like the old ones. You're meant to replay the same levels over and over again and discover new ways to do it. And this is a game that, as you play it and the more you learn it, it sparks your imagination over and over again. And kind of like Chris was saying earlier about the game Prey, is that a lot of the things you think of, you can do. And when you successfully pull off the assassination in this weird way that you thought of, you feel like $1 million for doing it. There's just, and so there's the creative aspect, but there's also like built-in assassinations that are really crazy. One in particular that I have to lightly spoil is in Hitman 3. There's one where you at the manor, the Dartmoor Manor, where you bring in a sniper rifle and you're able to lure this old woman out in front of a grave that's for her husband, and she's the target, and you can snipe her into the grave and then sneak out. And it is just simply an incredible feeling when you pull that off. And so I have to also just acknowledge, I mentioned this earlier, but they were able to make it so all 3 games are combined under this one package. And they actually just announced earlier today they're going to be selling a new bundle, the World of Assassination trilogy, that will get you all of this. And
coming to
Game Pass as well. So Colin, you can check that out when that happens as a subscriber. So this and I have to say too, I don't want to ramble too long, but I feel so happy for IO Interactive in that things were bleak when the first game in this trilogy came out. They had bought or worked out some kind of deal with Square Enix to retain the Hitman IP, and it seemed like things were up in the air. And Hitman 2 was a bigger splash. They released all the levels at once, and then Hitman 3 was just a huge success. And now they've got a deal with making a James Bond 007 game. And I am just so happy for them. And I didn't even get into the fact that you can play Hitman 3 in VR. And they even went back so you can play all the old missions in VR too.
Yeah, that's cool as fuck.
It's a fantastic package. It's a fantastic game. And the one last thing I'll just say is that in the third version, or the third entry in this new Hitman series, you'd almost feel like they wouldn't have any new ideas, just new locations or whatever. And Chris and I have talked about this in the past, but this game has a shocking level of new ideas for a third entry in what would appear to be a formulaic series.
Yeah.
And so I have to say, Hitman 3, you did it. You made me a believer and a huge fan of IO Interactive as someone who never played the old Hitman games. That Hitman, I think it was 2016 was the first one I played, and it's the real deal. Check it out. Hitman 3, Game of the Year.
Right on. Dustin's Game of the Year, Hitman 3. Chris, what's your Game of the Year? Number 1.
Yeah, so not going to be the most interesting answer because Dustin actually already talked about it, but I went over it in my head a bunch of times and I couldn't deny it, man. I think It Takes Two is just such a phenomenal experience. I'm not going to echo everything he said, although I agree with it. I just want to point out just the fact that this game attempts so many things and does it all so successfully that it's crazy. It's like this game was made on crack or something. Like, I don't understand. It might have been. But like, I don't understand. Like, you're
more like
dude,
coke,
you're
not
lucky.
crack.
Oh, yeah.
dude, you're lucky. You're lucky if you get a game that has solid gameplay. You know, you get a game that, like, all right, this has a solid gameplay, and maybe the story makes up for it in other ways. It's like, whatever, right? But this game does so many things in its co-op setting. Like, there's parts where you're in a like a Street Fighter setup where you're fighting somebody on a 2D plane on a plane, and the other character has to drive the plane. There are parts I spent.
Oh yeah,
I spent 3 hours playing chess in this game with my girlfriend, just playing chess in this really detailed, like, fully functioning chess simulation in this game. There's like, feels like 50 different mini games, and they all play like really, really well. The level of just sheer level variety in this game is insane. It's paced perfectly. Every time something is on the cusp of getting old, it switches it up to something you didn't think would even remotely happen. I look at a game like this, and I look at just the sheer variety in locations and aesthetic, and then I look at a game like Halo Infinite, and I'm like, what the hell? We went to there's fully functioning pianos in this game that you can play. Actually, there's the detail packed into this game is I believe genuinely unparalleled. Like, I have not seen a game that is so confident in just getting you lost in just the sheer complexity of it. And yet it's so simple and approachable. Like Dustin said, this isn't a game that you could play with somebody who has never played a game before. But my girlfriend plays a handful of games, and she got it very, very easily. This is not the most complicated thing. There's maybe like one or two mechanics at any given point in the game, and it always switches it up later. So it never feels like it's throwing too much at you. And I was just really impressed. I never got bored once, and that says a lot, because it's kind of a long game. I expected the game to end, I think, I probably at the halfway mark, just because of what I'm used to expecting from a lot of AAA games. It's like, oh, it's going to end here. And then there's like 50% left of the game, and I'm not upset about it. It's not like a Red Dead 2 situation where, like, you finish the game and you're like, oh, there's this long epilogue that's kind of like, it's weird. It's just really staggeringly well designed. All of the things that it attempts, it does successfully, and that's just really impressive to attempt so many different styles of gameplay, so many different types, like third-person shooting, combat, all these different explorations, even little things where they innovate on mechanics that have existed in 3D platforming for as long as I can remember. Things like grinding on rails, right? There's a button that you can press to speed yourself up along and gain momentum on the rails. Like, I don't know how the fuck I've never seen that before. It seems so obvious, but it's here, and it's so creative and so well made, and the bang for your buck here is astounding. If you have somebody to play this game with, there's so many things that you can do in it. There's so many games, plural, in this game that I almost feel like you can't go wrong recommending this to somebody. If somebody wants a co-op game, this is the definitive one now. Like, I think this is for sure the best co-op game I have ever played, for sure.
And Chris, one interjection just to add to your point there is that you only need to buy one copy of this game, which is crazy to me. It's not something you would expect from Electronic Arts, but if one person has a copy, you can go and download a free version that, as long as you have an invite from someone who has the game, you can play together.
Yeah.
All right, so that's Chris's game of the year. It Takes Two. My game of the year is Outriders, number 1.
Whoa.
Shocker.
Now, Outriders is a Colin-ass game. The more I've been removed from it, the more I realize that it really is a Colin-ass game. And I love this story. It's about the end of the world. And it's sci-fi. So it's about how the last remaining humans are trying to get off the planet into these two massive space ships. And one ship's in orbit and the other ship's being built. And then the first ship crashes and the other ship leaves without it. It's super dope. And they end up in this place, and I won't get into I actually don't want to spoil it because I think the story's really awesome, but there's a massive twist in the game. And I love it. It's a massive sci-fi twist that makes sense within the world and within the realm of physics and space travel and all of that. And otherwise, it's a pretty fun and kinetic action RPG, third-person shooter, cover-based shooter with different classes. I played as the Pyromancer. And what I really liked about it was People Can Fly developed it. And I remember playing it at first and being like, I don't know if I really get this. The health system is quite complicated. And in playing as a Pyromancer, whenever anyone is on fire, you're being healed. And you're constantly losing your energy, like constantly. It's constantly just going up and down. And so you're constantly trying to just get people on fire, as many people on fire, and you're just healing yourself as you're mowing them down. This is a game that's meant to be played with others, but it's a game that I played totally by myself. And I'm eagerly awaiting more. I don't know. I feel like it's not going to happen. I feel like it's just been canned. But I really, really enjoyed the world. I enjoyed the characters. I enjoyed the structure. I felt like the game, I'm playing Persona 4 and I'm talking a lot about how much of a joy it is to get around that game. Like everything kind of makes sense. It doesn't make you jump through hoops. Like I want to go to town. I want to go home. I want to go to the bookstore. I want to whatever. And you just do it and it just happens. This game was very similar where it didn't make you go jump through hoops. It almost felt like Borderlands, but without all of the places in Borderlands between the set pieces. It just felt like a huge collection of set pieces in each location as you get through this world. And I just really dug it. I think this game is really fun. I think that it has the stink of GamePass on it. I think that's a thing. And I feel like it makes some people not give games the certain amount of due that it deserves. I feel like maybe this game would have done even worse if not for Game Pass because it's just in this clutter of whatever. But inside of the heart of Outriders is like a really special, fun, customizable, funny, well-written, deep shooter. And I fall in love with these kinds of games once in a while. As people know, like I fell in love with The Division and The Division 2, which are meant to be played with others. But what I found in them are things that others didn't really find or a lot of other people didn't find. I'm like, oh, I love the atmosphere of this game. I love the harrowing nature of the Christmas decorations and perpetual hell. And just the idea of the dollar flu and all of this. And other people are like, yeah, I just want to grind in the dark zone or whatever and get new weapons. And I'm like, no, you're missing what The Division is, in my opinion. And I kind of feel the same thing with Outriders. People are playing it to grind and then they were done with it, especially on Game Pass. I remember people playing it in April. It came out April 1st. And then by May, they were done. Kind of feels a lot like Back 4 Blood. And I was like, no, you don't get it. You kind of just, you didn't feel it for what I think it was really supposed to be. And I almost wonder if Square Enix didn't do this game any favors by positioning it the way they did. It's much more narrative driven and character driven than I think they suggested. And I think that might have drawn more people in. So it was tough between Far Cry 6 and Outriders. Far Cry 6 almost edged it out. But as I said earlier, between Returnal, Far Cry 6, and Outriders, I played these 3 games combined for no fewer than 250 hours. Like, it's a lot of time. And I'll say that I felt like this year was in some ways pretty weak overall, but this allowed me to put 3 shooters on my list. 2 third-person shooters and an FPS are my top 3 games. Now, I've always been a shooter fan, but I think it shows that there's nothing Japanese. There's no true role-playing game. There's no offbeat indie game. These are all AAA games. So that's another unusual thing for me.
Yeah.
So that's my game of the year, Outriders. So Dustin is Hitman 3. Chris is It Takes Two. I am Outriders. However, each of us have 5 awards that we will quickly give away. Of course, these are just made-up awards. And, the game of the year is made up too. But Dustin, give away one of your awards here.
Sure. The Outstayed You're Welcome award goes to Tales of Arise for just never fucking ending. Even though it's not even as long as a Persona, but it's just I was just waiting for that game to be done repeatedly, thinking, is this it? Is this it? Nope, not yet. So Tales of Arise, a bit mixed on that.
I got to get back to that game at some point. I really want to. Michael loved it, I think. But we did a spoiler cast on it, so you guys can listen to that if you'd like. Chris, what's one of your awards?
Yeah, so I'm going to give the How Did You Mess This Up award to Battlefield 2042. Seems like everything was just in the right place. They didn't have a campaign to focus on. They could have focused all their resources on multiplayer side of things, which is the thing that Battlefield is known most for. They had a really solid setting and really solid level mechanics and really solid weather dynamic, like things that were like really exciting for Battlefield. And then it launched, and people were driving boats up the sides of skyscrapers at 50 frames a second, and I just don't know how they managed this, and that they charged $70 for it. Kind of crazy, given Call of Duty floundering and Halo going free to play. It's just such a early on this year, shooters were looking so good. It was looking to be like such a good year for shooters, 2021, because you had Battlefield focusing on multiplayer. You had Call of Duty, like whatever. Call of Duty's always the same. And then you had Halo going free to play. And I did not predict that Halo would have been the best one out of all of them. I actually thought Battlefield was going to take it for sure. And here we are. They done messed it up.
Yeah, it seems that way. Tom Henderson, who's a well-known games leaker in the industry, I don't know if you guys saw this, had tweeted out that some leaked emails from EA, which is fascinating. I always love behind-the-scenes shit like this, which they were saying two things were interesting. Was number one, they were like, we were totally caught off guard. Our mock reviews were in the 80s, etc. And the game didn't start to break down until a lot of people started playing it, apparently. And the second thing, which is more interesting, is that apparently there is massive tension inside DICE as to whether that problems even should be fixed, because they don't agree that some of the game, and it's like, oh no. Yeah, you guys are in trouble.
What do you mean they don't agree?
Yeah, like they don't, like I guess the design team and the inside are like, we don't agree that that's broken. We don't agree that that's wrong. We don't agree. It's like, okay.
All right.
Okay.
So we'll see. The first award I want to give is the Please Shut the Fuck Up and Let Me Play award. This goes to Scarlet Nexus. I really liked Scarlet Nexus. I thought the game was charming. Thought it was clever. I thought the design aesthetic was awesome. This whole plant, flower, household item, weird, lamps and light bulbs. It was super cool. I really liked it. It just didn't let you play it. I didn't understand why it wouldn't let me play it more. And I wonder if we'll get more or not. I know that this game, I will admit that this game was more of a mix of literal visual novel with role-playing game than I've ever seen. And in part, that's really cool. I guess some people would have really enjoyed that. But when I play a visual novel personally, I want it to be, I don't like just straight up reading visual novels, but I like Phoenix Wright, Danganronpa, obviously, things like that, where there's like an action or an investigative element, whatever the case might be. But I don't want to go and play Scarlet Nexus and do an entire really fun mission of action RPG and leveling up and all this amazing combat, and then just get stuck in a half an hour of conversation. It's incongruent. And I feel like, as I said on the show, I feel like by the end, I was just like, I don't care. I was just, I don't even know like what was that happening at the end. I'm like, I don't care. And maybe that's a me problem. Maybe Scarlet Nexus is in fact just not for me. But I feel like underneath all of that really manga just dribble was a fun action RPG that I hope we see more of. And I hope that they figure out a way to take better advantage of what I thought was pretty cool, the way the characters interlink with each other and all that. Very clever. Also, the way that they have a real action RPG in which handling your exterior characters makes sense, which is often a problem in these games, which is why action RPGs are often played by yourself. So I got to give the Please Shut the Fuck Up and Let Me Play award to Scarlet Nexus. It's such a shame that I had to skip so much to just beat it, because I just wanted to be done with it by the end.
Yeah, I feel similarly about it. I had the same. I was like, this is really fun gameplay, and then I got stuck in this conversation that I was like,
I just didn't care enough.
I could already tell I'm not going to like this.
The story was also nonsense, but that's neither here nor there. Dustin, what's your next award?
My next award is the Okay, Fine, I'll Play the Damn Game award. And this one goes out to everyone in the audience who repeatedly told me to play Death's Door, even though I had every intent of playing it the entire time. But this is the game that I don't know. I got requested so many times to play this game. A lot of people thought that it would be up my alley, and it kind of was. It was pretty. I think I talked about it last week, is that I enjoyed it, but I'm not jumping for joy about how great Death's Door is. But yeah, I got that one done, played it before Game of the Year. That was actually the big thing, is that people told me I need to play this before Game of the Year. And here we are. I did it for you. You're welcome.
Fair enough. Chris, what's your next award?
Yeah, so my next award is let's see, what do I want to? I'm gonna go positive. I'm gonna give the Deserve Some Love award to Knockout City, just for being kind of neat. Just a kind of neat little PvP dodgeball game that at face value looks really generic, but actually in playing, I kind of found a decent amount of technical depth that I was not expecting to find. It's a very arena shootery style game that has a surprising amount of exploits, and I know exploits is like a kind of a negative, has a negative connotation, but in a game like this where movement is fairly basic, just the ability to cancel animations and kind of distort the physics in a way that everybody can, so you're not really doing anything that is out of pocket because anybody else, if they're good enough, can do it. That's like some of the stuff that I really, really love about a lot of old arena shooters, and that style of, hey man, just if you get good enough at canceling your reload and you can get into melee really quick in a way that you wouldn't be able to if you just let the animation finish. Little things like that, like blocking the balls or like timing a perfect catch, or like even throwing balls like around corners and stuff. And it's a surprisingly deep little game that is a lot more competent than it really has any right to be. And I just thought I'd show some love because it's a cool little game.
Right on. My next award is the Wow, What an Awesome Surprise award. That goes to ActRaiser Resurrection. It's so funny because I was thinking back as to when we saw this revealed, which was at a Nintendo Direct a few months ago. And it was one of those things where I saw it for 1 millisecond. When I was in my chair, I'm like, that's ActRaiser. Because it was the first of all, I have like ActRaiser Japanese one framed in my house, but so I know it, but it's the statue with the sword in the hand. I'm like, that's ActRaiser. And I was just so excited, and I was disappointed that it was maybe only going to be on Switch, but it ended up coming out at the same time. It was out right away with the PS4. And I love the original ActRaiser on SNES. It is just such a wonderful and special game to me. It is from a studio. It was actually their first game called Quintet. They don't exist anymore, but at one time, Quintet was a very powerful Super Nintendo and a little bit PS1 era role-playing game studio. They made Robotrek. They made Terranigma, which never actually came out in the United States. And they made the Grand Stream Saga, which was a Sony-published RPG on PS1. And they've gone away a long time since. But it was cool to see their name again. It was cool to see their game again. And it was cool to see ActRaiser revived. I thought ActRaiser Resurrection was actually quite good. Like, pretty close to maybe being in Game of the Year consideration. It was, at first, it was, I think, hard for people to get over the fact that they changed it. And it wasn't just a straight port of what we wanted, which was ActRaiser. But underneath it was a much more dynamic and interesting and much deeper game. And for people that are unaware, it's just a fusion that you'd never really see of a god simulator and a side-scrolling action game. And it's super cool. And so I highly suggest people check out ActRaiser Resurrection, a nice surprise from Square Enix, getting the Wow, What an Awesome Surprise award. Dustin, what's your next award?
My next award is the Total Shit But Oddly Intriguing award. And that goes to our boy, Balan Wonderworld. And this game is not good. We've talked about it. The reverse draw distance, the one button gameplay. It's not good at all. But what's oddly intriguing about it is the expectations or the planning behind this game. There's like a novel or short story that you can buy. It was clear that Square Enix had hopes of making an IP, a big franchise out of this, and that just is completely DOA.
Caused his retirement. Yuji Naka's
It
retirement.
caused what's it? I can't remember his name, but it caused Yuji Naka's retirement. And it's just it's a weird game. It's got a big dance number at the end, and throughout it has many dance numbers.
Yeah, I was about to say, like, the game is like segmented by dance numbers.
Yeah,
like the whole. It's almost like your main reward for. It's almost the progression system. It's like you're rewarded with these uncanny, horrifying dances.
Yeah.
It's a shame that we're never going to get a Balan Wonderworld movie where Chris Pratt voices Balan or whatever the hell.
I'm trying to remember. I think the dance numbers are in a weird made-up language too.
Yeah.
So that
don't you have like 5 copies of it or something in your house?
I currently have 2 PS5 because I made a mistake with the order. I have a Switch version. If anyone has a PS4 and Xbox version and you don't want it anymore, let me know. I'll pay for shipping. I have a PO box. Just hit my DMs. I'm trying to get one of every system. So,
oh my God, you're gonna regret that. You're gonna be 80 years old, and you're gonna get one of these a day for the rest of your life.
Listen, okay, for 2022, anyone who sends me a Balan Wonderworld copy, not that I can't pay for shipping on all these, but I will put it and continue to stack them in my display back here. So if you want to send me one, hit me up. I'll let you know my PO box.
Yuji Naka is going to get some sort of restraining order on you. You think you're obsessed with them.
Yeah.
All right, Chris, what's your next award?
Yeah, so I'm gonna give the so Valve were pretty important, turns out, award to Back 4 Blood. This was a game that really should have been a shoo-in. It was like a pretty obvious thing that everybody wanted, and the design elements were just not where they needed to be. And I was actually shocked when I did a little bit of research. Somebody had sent me this really well done video of the making of Left 4 Dead and the making of Back 4 Blood. And there's all these interviews at the end of this video of people who were instrumental in making Left 4 Dead, and they're just talking like they say little things like, "Oh, we thought about this when we were making this," and then it says Valve, and then Valve, and then you look at the team at Turtle Rock who made Left 4 Dead, and it's like 4 people from current Turtle Rock who had any hand in Left 4 Dead, and it shows because as I don't think Back 4 Blood is as terrible as a lot of people think it is. I actually think it's decent, and I think a lot of the evolutions that they made on a gameplay front were actually really solid and really good. But the whole card system, and then just the lack of detail in animation of the zombies, which is like the biggest, like, atmosphere was the biggest part of Left 4 Dead, and it's just a shame that they didn't tap some of that ex-Valve talent in some way or learn from them in any real meaningful way to really capitalize on what Left 4 Dead really was and what that experience really meant to people. It's a shame. Just a big old shame.
Yeah, I was surprised with Back 4 Blood 2. Again, maybe GamePass stink on it, but that they also didn't give a lot of love to single player gamers. In fact, one of the things that they promised on their roadmap was that they would fix the game for people that wanted to play it alone, because that was actually a problem. And I was surprised by that, because that's just so, you would assume that was so easy to do. Everyone does that. I have no problem playing these games by myself. I was disappointed by that, because it would have probably fit a little niche for me at this point, but I digress. My next award it's the Communist Be Gone award. It goes to Tencent. Listen, I'm sick of seeing you. I don't want to see you in this industry. I don't trust your inclinations in this industry. I don't like how you're trying to get cute with Level Infinite and trying to hide your name. I am wary of this company, and we will continue to talk about it a great deal. I don't want to bang the drum too loudly, because we're going to do a Sacred Symbols Plus on it. We just did a Defining Duke Ultimate about a similar topic that I guested on with Maddie and Cog. So I just want to give that award quickly to the Communist Be Gone award. Take your award and go, Tencent. Dustin, what is your next award?
My next award is the Revisionist History Award.
How I feel about Revisionist History. Let's get into it.
And I'm going back. I never selected, even though I wasn't on the show, I never selected Death Stranding as my Game of the Year 2019. The Revisionist History, the new history, is that my Game of the Year of 2019 is Sekiro Shadows Die Twice, which I went through and did the platinum journey on. And it really gave me a new appreciation of this game, going and beating every single boss in the game and doing the multiple storylines and stuff like that. And so I'm going back. I'm changing history and giving Sekiro that award. Even though I loved Death Stranding very, very, very much, I got to give it to Sekiro. So there you go.
Fair enough. Chris, what's your next one?
Yeah, so the Let's Hope Silent Hill Comes Out Better award goes to the Medium.
Bloober team.
Yeah, so I actually was one of the people who was actually not super down on this. I thought it was like whatever. Like I played it for a little bit and I was like, this isn't for me, but it's got some things going for it. It does atmosphere kind of well. And there were aspects of it that were pretty good. And then I watched my girlfriend wanted to play it. So I was sitting with her and she was going through it. And as we got further and further along, we realized that there was really nothing more to the game than it was literally just the atmosphere that they had gotten right. And that's important, fair enough, but it it takes a twist, man. The Medium takes a twist that it does not earn at all. And it's so jarring and so strange. Like they wanted to have this weird Metal Gear Solid 2 Raiden moment almost, but nobody cares. And it's just dumb and intrusive and beyond the pale. It almost reminds me of 12 Minutes.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that. I'm waiting for that to go down in price. I'll play it, but I'm not paying $25 for that game. Just on principle, I'm doing that.
Well, if you have Game Pass, you could just. I think it's on Game Pass. I think
that's true.
Maybe you could just spend 12 minutes with that.
That's a good point. Look at you.
Yeah, look at me with my discount brain. But yeah, that's it. The Medium was it's a game.
Enough. All right, let's see here. My next one, the You Get It award goes to Cyber Shadow. It's a great game. This was another game that almost snuck onto my list.
So good.
I'm sorry?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I'm sorry. I misunderstood you. Just made by one person, Mechanical Head, I think he goes by. Published by my friends at Yacht Club Games. Totally, I understand why they identified this game as something they wanted to get involved with. As I understand, the game didn't sell extraordinarily well, which is absolutely shocking. Like when I see a game like this and it didn't sell well, I want to just fucking wring people's necks because it doesn't get much better than this when it comes to old school games. This game is a love letter to Ninja Gaiden, the NES ones, unlike any I've ever seen. And somehow, as I noted when I played it, and I played it over 2 different times, as you guys recall, in the beginning of the year and the end of the year, that it is like Mega Man enemies, though. It for some reason just makes sense. It's not like Ninja Gaiden with the enemies. You're fighting like machines and things that are shooting you and stuff. It's so good. Cyber Shadow is so good. I got to give Mechanical Head and Yacht Club the You Get It award for making a really wonderful ode to the old school that I wish did better and got more attention, but it just didn't. And I thought it was going very similar to The Pathless. I thought that this game was going to get a lot of attention because there was nothing else to play when it came out, but it just didn't turn out that way. All right, Dustin, your final award goes to...
My final award. Maybe I should have reordered them so my final award wasn't this one, but I think it's a good award regardless. And that is the Well Played award. And the Well Played award goes to Microsoft.
Sure.
In that for many years, really the entire last generation, we didn't see Microsoft at their best as a worthy competitor to what PlayStation was offering in a lot of ways. And this past year, they've really, really stepped it up. The Series X, GamePass, all of that. And particularly the most well-played moment was the trap card of getting MLB The Show on Game Pass, Sony's own game. That honestly, to me, will go down in history of one of the craziest news stories or moments, whatever.
I agree.
Just that they pulled that off. Well played. Yeah. So Microsoft, congratulations.
And incredible to watch the tension between not Microsoft and Sony, but Sony and the MLB, which is I assume where the problem actually rests. If they look at it as a problem at all, because remember, even though MLB The Show is on Game Pass, it is still one of the best-selling games in North America, just sold on PlayStation, and physical copies you can buy on Xbox as well. All right, Chris, what's your final award?
All right, my final award is the actually scared me for real award. And I wanted to give that to Resident Evil Village. Resident Evil Village is not a particularly scary game. It's in the horror genre, but it's definitely in more of the eerie kind of like campiness of that genre, and in a really fun way. But I have thought ceaselessly about House Beneviento. Like every now and again, I'll remember that, and I'm so glad I have that on stream and recorded, because I'll go back and watch it and just like actually see like a moment in my life that's very rare, and that's just being genuinely freaked out by a video game. It doesn't happen a lot. A lot of horror games I appreciate because I like Fatal Frame and some of these older Silent Hills, but they never scared me in that way. And I think the juxtaposition of that horrifying section with the rest of the game, which is more, it's less traditionally scary, worked so beautifully for that moment in that game. And it's just very, very cool. Resident Evil Village in general was, I think when I think about it, looking back on it, was just a lot. I just feel really good about it. Like it's just a game that I feel good thinking about. It was a really pleasant experience. And I just wanted to give that award to them, because not that I'm super badass or anything, but I'm not easy to scare.
Fair enough. Resident Evil Village was a very good game. I really liked it a lot. I was especially fond of Duke, the shopkeeper.
Yeah. So good.
All right. Final award. This is an appropriate place for it because we saved the best for last. I give the Self-Congratulations Award to Habroxia 2, my own game. Now, this is the second game I've written, and the third game that I wrote is going to be revealed very soon, and you're going to be playing it very soon too. And then the fourth game is also in development, so a lot going on here. But I got to give a shout out to Habroxia 2, not for me so much, but for Barry, the majority owner, programmer, designer of our games. What a fucking dynamo this man is. Just incredible. As we go from arcade shooter to brick breaker to JRPG to side scroller, and he just seamlessly moves between these genres, and we are making, I truly believe, I think Twin Breaker is a really good game. I'm really proud of it. I love Twin Breaker. I love Brick Breakers, but I know it's not for everyone. And I know a lot of people didn't really understand what we were trying to do, which was to make a comically deep story in a Brick Breaker. Maybe it didn't play the way we wanted it to. But Habroxia 2 is truly a stellar game, I think. Like, I think it's one of the great old school indie throwbacks. And I say that as someone who just wrote it. It was given to me and I wrote it. It wasn't like I designed it. So I just was like, this is what the enemies are called. This is what the story is. This is what's going on. This is what the map names are and all that. Like, and I gave the game feel. But at the center of it is just a really fun old school game that I think deals with a very big problem in the industry very eloquently, which is it this hard as you want it to be? And it truly is. Go play it. And I challenge you to see exactly what I mean. It's as hard as you want it to be. And so I'm really proud of it. I'm proud of Habroxia too. And I thank everyone for buying it. I think we're closing in probably on 15,000 units sold now. So we really appreciate you guys. Of course, it's hard to see what we sold because it's impossible to see these numbers in some coherent way, but nonetheless, those are our games of the year, game of the year awards and all the rest. Fun to do that. Appreciate it. Let's get the hell out of here now. Dustin, do you have any closing comments?
My only closing comment is I want to recommend the video listeners go back to the timestamp of the news item number 3, where we were talking about the PS5, them still building PS4s, because as Colin was reading that earlier in the show, I noticed a stink bug crawling across my screen. He somehow managed to go down across the screen, across my desk, up the arm of my microphone here, and I just spotted something moving out of the corner of my eye. So I'm curious if my momentary panic is on video. He's currently I was able to capture him in this piece of paper. I believe he's still alive, because you're not supposed to crush them because they're stink. So he's alive, and he's in here.
You wrapped him in the middle of the show?
Yeah, I scooped him off the mic.
You mummified him.
It's all on camera. I scooped him off.
Look at you.
And now he's living here. He's eventually going to end up in the fucking trash where he belongs.
Cool. Fuck it. It's a bug. I want to. I always think about I don't know why it comes up on Knockback every once in a while, but we talk about the idea that science could effectively eradicate mosquitoes. Like, it could do it. We know how to do it. The idea is should you do it? And I always love that question.
Yes.
Yeah, I think the answer is yes too. But it would have catastrophic effects on the ecology, obviously.
That's fine.
Anyway, eradicate stink bugs too while you're at it, and everything in the ocean.
Yeah.
Chris, closing comments.
Look, man, I know you feel down about 2021 as like it's a weak year. I kind of feel the opposite, man. I feel like I played a lot of really cool stuff that I probably would have ignored if we had many more big heavy hitters. You know, like I don't know if I would have bothered with It Takes Two, you know, if there was just nothing else to play. And it's cool to have these calmer years where you can kind of delve into stuff that you might have missed or delved into stuff that might not otherwise appeal to you. And I would recommend everybody just sort of get outside of the comfort zone a little bit, because I know it's easy for us to I do this a lot too, where I just default to the same games over and over again. But every now and again, I'll branch out and I'll feel like it's totally worth it. And in that spirit, I'm going to go play.
Right on, man. Yeah, you've convinced me that I think I'd like to get back to it at some point. Maybe I will, because I kind of am looking for something to play. Although at the time of recording this, I think Mushroom Wars 2 is now out, and I can't wait to play that. Old school PlayStation fans will remember Mushroom Wars as a early PSN game that was super fucking good. So I'm excited to go back and play that, but I'm the only one probably. All right. That's it for us here on Sacred Symbols. Thank you so much for your love, kindness, and support, whether on free feeds, YouTube, Patreon, patreon.com/laststandmedia. We appreciate your love, kindness, and support there. We'll see you next time for more Sacred Symbols. Until then, goodbye.
See ya.
Take care, guys. Get the hell out of here.
Sacred Symbols, a PlayStation podcast, is a product and trademark of Last Stand Media and Colin's Last Stand LLC, and is proudly recorded in the USA. The show is conceived by, is written by, and is directed by me, Colin Moriarty. My co-hosts are Chris Raygun Maldonado and Dustin Furman. The show is produced by executive producer Dustin Furman. It's edited by associate producer Ben Smith. All of Last Stand's theme music is by my best friend, Ramon Narvaez. As you know, all of Last Stand shows, including Sacred Symbols, are fan-funded on Patreon at patreon.com/laststandmedia. The following names are at the producer level on Patreon, our highest tier, and we're grateful for your thoughtful and kind contributions to our independent endeavor. Thank you.